You should know by now I'm never wrong. I can back that up, Pete chimed in with a grin. It's been 11 years and I'm still waiting to win my first argument. They all laughed as the couple tried to lift Tim's spirits. Compared to the previous week, the last few days had not been great for him. Even though he had seen Donna daily, he felt like the excitement and joy had faded away. He suspected that their connection was not going to grow any stronger. Trisha disagreed, and, as always, was not shy about sharing her thoughts. "If you want my opinion, you're both just scared," she said. Tim shot her a frustrated glance, which she ignored. "You both know she's leaving, but neither of you wants to take action." Tim felt his irritation growing, but kept his cool. "What about the way she looks at me, or how secretive she's been about her plans? I'm sure there's something she's not telling me." Pete and Trisha exchanged concerned glances. Finally, Pete spoke up. "What if she's not hiding anything? Maybe she's just nervous, like Trisha said. If you knew she liked you, what would you do?" "What are you saying? Ask her out for what, 3 days? She's going home on Sunday, far away." Pete gave Tim a playful grin. "You've never learned how to think differently, have you?" On Thursday night, Tim had to stay late at work to finish testing a new piece of equipment that needed to be ready for production by Monday. It was important, and he had to call Donna to cancel their plans. Pete and Trisha invited her to their house so she wouldn't have to sit alone in her motel room. Tim appreciated their kindness and hoped they could help him understand her mood a little better. He had asked them not to pry, but if Donna shared something important, it would help him. On Friday night, Tim took Donna to a new restaurant that Pete claimed was the most romantic in town. Given how awkward things had felt all week, Tim knew he had a lot of work to do to help her feel comfortable enough to consider his proposal. He understood it was probably too soon, but felt he had few options left. When he arrived at the motel, Pete's advice seemed wiser. Donna looked beautiful in a striking red dress with a matching shawl. The dress hugged her figure nicely, and Tim felt a bit underdressed in comparison. "Wow," was all he could manage to say. Donna smiled at his genuine reaction and leaned in to kiss his cheek. "I just wanted to look nice for you. I hope that's okay." Tim struggled to find the right words to show how much he admired her. Donna had always been a lovely woman. Even her little flaws seemed to add to her charm. She had a friendly, approachable quality that made her very beautiful to him. Tonight, though, she looked stunning. They went to the restaurant without wasting time. Tim was happy to find that their conversation flowed more easily and was filled with laughter, in contrast to their earlier week. He focused on enjoying the moment with her, and she seemed just as happy. After dinner, he took her out dancing. They had a wonderful time, and he started to feel more confident about his choice. It seemed like she might be open to his ideas, as his friends had suggested. He hoped that was true. For the first time in a long while, Tim could envision himself in a true relationship. It felt a bit risky, given their past and her sudden return, but he felt it was worth the chance. Around 11, they left the club and took a quiet drive. When they got to the hotel, she asked him to come to her room. As he followed her inside, he wished instead that he had gone home to relax with some drinks. "Donna, these past few weeks have surprised me," he began. "When you arrived, I was still really upset about our time in college, but now I feel differently." She raised her hand to stop him. "Hold on, Tim. Please, don't say more." Before he could respond, she stood up. "Before we go further, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" he asked, feeling uneasy. She looked deeply into his eyes, clearly torn. "I never thought you'd be so nice to me after everything we've been through." She started rubbing her hands together anxiously. "This is so complicated. I didn't think you'd be able to see me as a friend again, and I don't want to change that. But there's something important I need to share, and I'm afraid it might complicate things." She looked down at the floor. "I didn't just come to your place without a reason." Tim's stomach tightened as he started to think of all the possibilities. "Then why did you come?" "I was invited," she said quietly. "By who?" he asked, feeling his frustration rise. "Your mother," she replied softly, meeting his gaze again. It took a moment for her words to sink in, and then Tim grasped the bed for support as his knees nearly buckled. "Why? How? What is happening?" he stammered. "I can't tell you." She saw his strong reaction and quickly added, I promised to let her explain everything to you. I'm sorry, but I won't break that promise for anything. Her voice shook, and he could see she was about to cry. Tim looked at her closely to see if she was sincere. All he could see was a woman he cared about, in pain, stuck between breaking a promise or making him upset. At first, he felt anger, but the more he thought about what she had said, the stranger the situation became. Donna looked down, bracing herself for an outburst. When it finally happened, it was not what she expected. Tim unexpectedly let out a laugh, trying not to, which came out as a funny noise. Her eyes widened, and soon his laughter was too distracting to think clearly. He laughed so hard that he had to catch his breath. "This isn't funny," she said, frustrated. Donna stomped her foot and put her hands on her hips, insisting, "Tim, this is not funny." A moment later, when he wiped away his tears, he saw her trying to hold back a smile. A grin spread across her face, and then she sniffed, trying to clear her nose. Finally, her soft laughter mixed with his as he flopped back on the bed, covering his face, trying to stop. After a moment, he composed himself enough to understand what was happening. Donna was sitting next to him, laughing and holding her sides. She seemed to release the worries she had about her secret and how he would react. "Was this your mother's idea? How did you manage to get her to talk to you? Last I heard, she wasn't too happy with you," he asked. Donna wiped her eyes with her hand, and his words broke the tension between them. "I can't tell you that. Please don't ask. I already feel bad enough about this." She cleared her throat and then burst into laughter again, the irony making them both crack up. When they settled down, Tim leaned over and kissed her on the cheek, trying to show her he wasn't mad. "Is this why you've been acting differently lately?" She nodded, looking a bit guilty. "Things were changing fast, and I didn't want to keep secrets between us. You've been so kind to me. I didn't want to hurt you again. I didn't think you'd react this way," she finished, looking relieved but still confused. "I'll talk to her tomorrow, and then we need to finish this conversation, okay?" he said firmly. It felt pointless to think about the conversation waiting for him in the morning. Tim rang the doorbell of the simple 3-bedroom house. Normally he would just walk in, but he wanted to make a statement. Still, he wasn't sure it would work. The door opened, and a woman in her middle years looked at him, curious. "Tim, what are you doing here?" "Well," he replied, keeping a serious tone, "since you decided to take charge of my life, I wasn't sure if I should just enter or wait to be invited in." He paused to see how she would respond. She stared at him for a moment, then lifted her hand and made a silly gesture. Tim feigned shock, but she couldn't help but smile. His attempt to be serious faded as they both laughed, the tension in the air vanishing. This all started in his junior year of high school. Tim was close to his parents, especially his mom. They rarely had big arguments like many of his friends, but one day he asked to go to a party, and she said no. She found out he was involved in getting alcohol for the party, and while she understood that teens often go to these events, she didn't like how he was trying to fit in. In a rare moment of teenage anger, he snapped. He felt his cheeks grow warm and his hands trembled. Without thinking, he made a disrespectful gesture. She looked shocked for a moment. Then, as reality broke through his anger, he realized he had crossed a line. He stood there, frozen, waiting for her response. Her eyes softened, and for a moment, Tim worried she might cry. Instead, she kept staring at him, seeing her normally responsible son trying to act tough but failing. She brought her hands to her face, and he braced himself, expecting a reaction. But then he noticed her shaking, and a small laugh escaped her lips. His surprise grew as he saw tears of laughter filling her eyes. After a moment of feeling both relieved and a bit annoyed that she found it funny, Tim couldn't help but join in. He sat down beside her on the couch, and they both laughed for several minutes, sharing a bond strengthened by a silly moment. Every time one of them started to gain control, the other would burst into laughter, making them start all over again. Finally, they both calmed down and hugged each other. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't mean that." "That's okay, dear. I understand," she replied with a warmth only a mother can give. "Does this mean I'm not in trouble?" With a serious face, she mirrored his expression, and they both erupted in laughter again. That was the moment Tim felt their bond change. She began to give him more freedom and let him make his own choices. As a result, he made sure to be respectful, never arriving late. always calling to share where he was and striving to make her and his dad proud. They never forgot that moment, and it became a little joke to ease any tense situations. As Tim watched her do it now, he smiled, knowing that whatever she had said to Donna was something he would eventually agree with. She was a wise woman, and he appreciated the intelligence he had inherited from her and the lessons he was starting to learn. Tim spoke earnestly, pushing away any annoyance he felt. "So I guess you're not going to deny any of this?" Her expression turned serious. "No, it's true, but please let me explain." She invited him to sit down in the living room where she continued. "It started about 2.5 years ago. She showed up at our door unexpectedly. I hesitated to talk to her, but her manner made me feel like I should listen." Mom's face grew somber, as though she was recalling a tough memory. "Donna told me that her father had just passed away. This affected her deeply. He cared about you a lot. She shared how disappointed he was when you two broke up and she started dating Jake, though she never revealed the full story to him. After he died, she felt guilty for letting him down and had to talk to someone but was scared to face you. So she came to me instead." Tim was surprised. "I don't understand why she thought that would be easier." Mom looked at him seriously. "She didn't really. She just wanted to avoid making things worse for you. So she thought it would be better for me to handle it. She opened up a little, but she insisted that if she ever shared the whole story, it would only be with you. We talked for a long time. By the time she left to see her friend Cindy the next day, my feelings about her had shifted somewhat." Confused, Tim interrupted. 2.5 years ago? Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I really didn't want to interfere, dear," she replied genuinely. "It's your life, and I didn't think it was right to get involved. Just because my feelings changed doesn't mean I would support her trying to reach out to you. You were starting a new chapter after school, and it seemed like you were moving on from her." "Anyway," she continued, "we chatted every few months over the next couple of years on the phone. She visited me when she was in town to see her friend. I could tell she wanted to see you, but she never asked. It was tough for me to watch because I knew she wasn't happy, but she didn't want to bring you into her troubles. About 2 months ago, she called and shared her struggles. It was clear she needed to talk to you to feel better. I felt it was time for you two to have a conversation." I looked at her warily. "Why?" I asked. She gave me a sad look. "Because you haven't been moving on either. I'm your mom. I know you well. You haven't been the same since that night. I hoped that meeting her could help you find some closure." "Is that it?" he asked, already sensing more behind her words. "No, you smart aleck," she admitted, slightly annoyed he saw through her. "After all the talks we had, I thought there might still be something between you two. You had been upset for so long, but maybe you could reach a point where you could listen to her. At least, I hoped you could." "Well, maybe you should have warned me. I almost ruined everything the first time we talked. I was so harsh. It's a wonder she wanted to speak to me again. We were lucky to work things out." She shrugged. "That was up to you. It's your life. I just thought it would be good for you to see each other again." "So last Sunday when she was busy, she was here. We talked and she told me everything. She was happy you enjoyed spending time with her again, but she didn't want to go too far. She worried about getting hurt since her visit couldn't last more than a week." Mom raised her eyebrows, hinting at something. Tim took the hint. "Well, I have a plan to make her stay longer, if she's interested." She smiled, looking genuinely pleased. "That's wonderful. I truly believe that would be good for both of you, no matter what you decide in the end." He glanced at his watch and realized it was already 4 o'clock. Quickly, he rushed through his plans, determined to make it hard for Donna to say no. He let her know that he needed to leave to get everything ready. She gave him a warm hug at the door. "Good luck, honey," she said, tenderly brushing his hair back. "I think you're making a good choice." "Of course you do," he replied with a hint of irony. "It was your suggestion." She smiled and kissed his cheek, giving him that familiar look that always reassured him. It showed her complete confidence in her plan. Tim shook his head as he walked to the car, wondering if he would ever feel as sure of himself as she did. Tim had just finished setting the table when the doorbell rang. After a quick check to ensure everything was ready, he walked slowly to the door, trying to appear calm despite the nervousness inside him. He took a deep breath and reached for the doorknob. When he opened the door, He almost stopped breathing. Donna stood there, glowing in the light from the living room. She looked beautiful, her face highlighted by the warm light. It struck him suddenly that the reason she looked so radiant was that she was standing in the dark. In his rush to prepare for dinner, he had forgotten to turn on the porch light. "Wow," Donna said with a smile. "I was starting to think I had the wrong day." "Oops," was all Tim could manage to say. "It's all right," she said happily, stepping forward to give him a light kiss on the cheek. "Would you mind if we ate right away?" he asked, hoping to avoid any questions about his visit to his mom and to set a good tone. "Dinner is ready and I don't want it to get cold." Donna smiled. "That sounds great, Tim. It smells wonderful. Did you cook it?" she asked with a playful grin. "Yeah, right. I'm going to invite you over for dinner and then risk you not liking my cooking?" He chuckled. "It's from a restaurant Pete and Trisha took me to a while back. The food is excellent. Just hurry before I mess it up." They went to the dining room where the table was set carefully. He had bought a special tablecloth for the occasion and added candles that provided a soft light. He pulled out a chair for her and then took a seat across from her. The food was tasty, but there was a bit of unease as they tried to make small talk. Tim needed everything to go smoothly, so he focused on keeping the conversation light. After they finished eating, he went to the fridge and got the French silk pie from his favorite bakery. Donna loved chocolate, and French silk was her favorite. The happiness on her face showed that he had made a great choice. They each had a large slice, but saved the rest for later. "I can't believe I ate so much," she joked. "I might need some help getting out of here." "Well, the real question is, did you enjoy it?" he asked, eager for her praise. Truthfully, it was clear she had loved every bit. "Tim, it was fantastic," she replied genuinely. "This whole trip has been more amazing than I ever dreamed. Thank you." He smiled at her words. "Can we move to the living room? I have one more surprise." She smiled back and walked to the living room while he stayed behind to get a bottle of wine and some glasses. After taking a deep breath, he joined her. Once he poured her a glass, Tim raised his own. "Two old friends, finally back together," he said, looking closely at her face. Seeing her happiness gave him the courage to speak. After sipping his drink, he began the speech he had practiced since talking with Pete. "Donna, I'm really glad you came back here. I know it was hard for you. I wish I could have made it easier." "Tim, you didn't do anything wrong," she said. He gently placed a finger on her lips to signal her to let him finish. "This isn't about blame. What happened in the past can't be changed. Now we need to decide what to do next." She seemed ready to say something, but stayed quiet. "The last few weeks have been wonderful for me, and I don't want it to end." He paused, giving her time to respond. "I don't want it to end either, Tim," she said, her eyes starting to fill with tears. "This is the best I've felt in ages. But what can we do? I have to go back home tomorrow. Work won't give me more time off, and—" She looked away, embarrassed. "I can't afford it if they did." He reached over and held her hand gently. "What if you could?" She looked at him, puzzled. "Donna, if there was a way for you to stay, would you think about it? Would you consider going out with me again and exploring what we could be?" "But how? You're not asking me to stay here," she said, glancing around the house. "No," he replied, shaking his head. "That would be too much pressure for us both. But what if I knew a nice, affordable place where you could stay?" "Tim, I would love to stay," she exclaimed, a tear rolling down her face. "I have nothing waiting for me back home. I'm completely broke. This trip has used up all my savings." "Listen, Donna, you told me before that you don't like your job and it's taking too long to get to where you want to be. My company works with a big hospital and we have a program where we fix old equipment for a tax benefit. Pete got the program started and knows some people there. They would look at your application positively," he said, smiling. "You could get a better job, one that pays more with chances for growth. Plus, Cindy lives nearby, and I know you both are close. You would be able to see her all the time. I spoke to my mom," he said with a playful look, "and found out you can visit anytime." She gave a small, apologetic smile. "I'm really sorry about that, Tim. I didn't mean to mislead you. When I talked to your mom, I didn't think I would see you again. Honestly, I thought she would be really angry with me. She was so nice to me, her eyes looking off into the distance. I can't tell you how much that meant to me. Thank you for not being upset." He shrugged. "What can I do? She started all this. and I'm more scared of her than you." When Donna laughed, he turned serious again. "So, what do you think? Should we take a chance?" Donna wiped her face with her hand. "That sounds wonderful. I can't believe you went through all this for me, but I just can't. I never really told you how hard things are for me. The job sounds amazing and I want to spend more time with you, but I can't afford to move right now." Her eyes showed determination. "And I can't accept help from you. It wouldn't feel right." She let her guard down and looked through him, just like he remembered from college. "I want you to know, Tim, I would love to see if there could be something between us. You are a great man, and I'm so impressed by what you have done with your life. It's wonderful. If things were different, I would be happy to stay." Taking a breath, Tim revealed his last idea. "Well, what if there was a way for you to stay until you have the money you need? Trisha knows a person named Maria who recently lost her roommate. They talked, and Maria said if you are willing to sign a lease for a year, you could stay there for the first 2 months free. The woman who left paid in advance, so Maria doesn't need the money, but she wants someone she can trust without doing many interviews. All she would want is for you to pay your half of the utilities at the end of the month." Donna looked at him in surprise. "I don't know what to say," she stammered. "Well, I would love to hear you say you will at least think about it. I need to give some answers soon." Her expression softened, changing to hope. "You really want me to stay that much? You're not just being nice?" Tim was surprised to see fear in her eyes, which brought him back to reality. "Donna, I wouldn't have done all this if I hadn't thought it through. I really want you to stay. This is hard for me." He lowered his gaze. "I haven't felt like this in a long time, and I'm afraid of getting hurt. You mean a lot to me." He was interrupted when Donna suddenly hugged him tightly, her arms around his neck. She pressed a gentle kiss on his lips, holding on and not letting him move. Finally, she let go and stepped back, looking a bit shy about what had just happened. So can I take that as a yes?" he said, stumbling over his words. Donna smiled and gave him a light kiss on the nose. "That's a definite yes." "You know, if you had told me this would be part of being your girlfriend, I might have gone back to my mom's," she joked, holding up an old pair of sweatpants. Tim always seemed to forget to get rid of them, even with her reminders. "They're not that bad," he argued, trying to defend himself. "You wouldn't believe how comfortable they are." She raised an eyebrow and looked at him with a teasing glare. "I'll never find out. I like my clothes to be more modern, thank you very much." With that, she headed down the stairs, determined to not let him keep them hidden any longer. Tim smiled as he watched her walk away. The way her jeans fit her really caught his attention. It made the awkwardness between them even more confusing. They had been dating for 2 months, but they seemed to be out of sync. They enjoyed each other's company, but closeness felt like a dream. The word love hadn't come up at all. He worried that despite their fondness for each other, they might not be right for each other. He realized this wasn't too surprising. Even though they had a close relationship in college, they had both changed a lot since then. The easy connection they once had was no longer there. She often reacted to things in ways he didn't expect, and she seemed taken aback by how he responded to different situations. They were still getting to know each other again, which made it hard to move forward in their relationship. There were still memories from the past that lingered with him, even though he tried to put them behind him. He believed she felt the same way, though they rarely talked about it. The memories were too heavy for both, so they were trying to start fresh. Tim knew that their wish to avoid those past thoughts was keeping them from being open with each other. Yet he couldn't find the courage to bring it up. He pushed those thoughts aside as he saw her come back up the stairs. Nothing could distract him from the sight of her shirt fitting snugly, emphasizing her shape. Tim felt a rush of frustration as he realized she wasn't wearing a bra. Just what I needed, he thought, feeling overwhelmed. Just because they hadn't been close didn't mean he hadn't thought about it. The memories of their past moments together were vivid in his mind, as if they happened just yesterday. Plus, he couldn't shake the recent memory of her swimming in his pool without any clothes. As she walked closer, her voice broke through his thoughts. "Are you okay?" she asked, pulling him back to the present. "Huh. Oh, yeah, sorry," Tim mumbled. "I was just lost in thought." "Well, don't even think about complaining to me. They're gone and you're not getting them back," she teased. Tim tried to look more annoyed than he felt, hoping she wouldn't notice that his mind had wandered. Keep this up, and I won't ask for your help again. Promises, promises, Donna laughed as she moved over to the dresser, rummaging through a drawer for a shirt she knew was tucked away. Tim was so distracted by her presence that he didn't even notice what drawer she was searching through. Suddenly, she stopped. "What's this?" she asked. Tim stepped closer and felt his heart sink when he saw what she had found. Donna stood there holding a small jewelry box. She opened it without looking at him, and as soon as she saw what was inside, her face grew pale. Slowly, her eyes lifted to meet his, and the intensity of her gaze made him look away. "Well, he stammered, completely unprepared to explain the engagement ring hidden away in an old box. His reaction said everything. It was clearly something from their past. "Tim," she said softly, her voice heavy with emotion. "What is this?" He hesitated, not wanting to admit the truth but unable to find another way out. Feeling embarrassed, he turned away. "I bought it in college," he mumbled, before everything. The memories of that time washed over him, bringing a wave of emotions he had tried to bury. He could feel tears threatening to escape, but he fought to keep them back. Just when he thought he might be able to slip away, he felt a gentle touch on his shoulder. "You bought this for me," she whispered, her voice shaking. He nodded but kept his gaze averted, not wanting her to see the shame he felt. There was a long pause, and then he felt her hands on his face. He tried to pull away, not wanting her sympathy, but she gently turned his face toward her. When their eyes finally met, he was surprised to see tears running down her cheeks. Donna leaned in slowly and their lips met in a tender kiss. It was a soft connection, filled with all the emotions they had been holding back. Tim felt something spark between them, a connection that had been missing for a long time. As they embraced, he could feel their shared history, the ups and downs, all coming together in that quiet moment. It was as if they were both remembering something they had lost and were slowly finding again. Donna leaned in closer, kissing Tim gently on the face and neck. Suddenly, she turned him around and playfully pushed him onto the bed. She followed quickly, landing beside him. Her kisses became more eager, and her hands fumbled with the buttons on his shirt as they grew closer. She moved quickly, and Tim felt her hands working their way down, brushing his side before pausing for a moment. Tim's head fell back as Donna's touch moved lower, gently running her fingers across his stomach. He could feel her warm breath as she continued downward, causing a soft shiver to run through him. Their connection deepened, and every movement seemed to bring them closer together. He gripped the bedsheets tightly, overwhelmed by the closeness and intensity between them. "Slow down," he whispered, feeling the emotions rise within him. Donna's eyes met his, and without breaking their connection, she paused. She moved beside him, resting her head on his chest for a moment as they both caught their breath. After a quiet moment, she pulled away slightly and sat up, taking a deep breath as she gazed at him. Tim reached for her hand and she smiled softly. They shared a look, communicating without words. Donna then laid beside him again, holding him close as they rested together, the room quiet and calm. They stayed close, enjoying the warmth and comfort of each other's presence, letting the quiet moments speak for the connection between them. As the moment passed, she leaned against him, feeling spent from the intense experience. He lay back, feeling tired and sweaty. Turning to look at Donna with surprise, he asked, "Where did that energy come from?" She gently held his face and said, "You are such a great man, and I don't know if I deserve you." Tim shook his head, unsure but decided not to push the topic. The closeness they shared had felt magical, and he didn't want to spoil the mood. He thought she might be feeling bad about the past, but he promised himself to comfort her later. What happened before was behind them, and it was time for both of them to move on. As he watched her relax, feeling happy and content, he felt the last piece of his protective wall start to fall away. For the first time in years, he felt truly alive. He knew without needing to hear it from her that whatever had been holding them back was now gone. "Hurry up, we're going to be late," Tim said with a bit of impatience. "Give me a moment, I can't meet your friends looking like I just woke up," Donna replied, a hint of annoyance in her voice. "First of all," he said, finding her irritation amusing, If you really looked like that, I'd let them wait for us." He moved closer and playfully hugged her from behind, kissing her neck. Donna gently pushed him away as she focused on her hair. "Secondly," he continued, stepping back, "they're not just my friends, they're our friends." Donna stopped and looked at him with regret. She approached him and took his hands. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. I care about both of them a lot. It's just difficult sometimes because of everything that happened. They loved you before and had a hard time accepting me. I understand that, but they know you much better than me." She kissed him on the cheek and looked into his eyes. "They are our friends," she emphasized, "and it's important to me that I look my best so they know I appreciate you. Now let me finish getting ready so we can go." She kissed him again and went back into the bathroom. Tim watched her prepare, trying to take in how she looked and acted. This was a big night, and things would never be the same afterward. He thought about the 6 months since she had found his old ring. They had shared a deep connection that day. He couldn't imagine anything being better. As he watched her getting ready, Tim realized how wrong he had been to doubt their connection. After finally being together again, they had quickly fallen into a comfortable rhythm, so different from their time in college. They were both older now, and felt connected in many small ways he never knew were possible back then. Sometimes he wondered if everything would have been as good if they hadn't broken up. Whenever that thought appeared, it was usually followed by a sad one. He might just be finding ways to get past the hurt. Tim loved her deeply, and thinking about what happened was hard. After a lot of effort, he found ways to avoid thinking about it. He wasn't sure if that was the best choice, but it had brought him to where he was now, which was more than he ever expected. "Since you're in such a hurry, why are you just sitting there daydreaming?" she asked him. Tim shook his head, knowing he couldn't explain his thoughts to her. He barely understood them himself, but that didn't matter. He felt truly happy for the first time since college, even happier than before. Now he had the respect of his friends and the money to do what he wanted. Having Donna in his life made it even better. They left for the restaurant an hour early. He told Donna it was because he wanted to pick up Pete's watch at the jewelry store on their way. Tim had given her the receipt to hold, knowing how forgetful he could be with things like that. When they arrived at the store, Donna pointed out, "Honey, the sign says closed. I hope Pete won't be upset." Tim shrugged. "Well, let me check if anyone's inside." He got out and ran to the front door, looking through the glass for signs of employees. When he saw a movement inside, he knocked on the glass. A friendly-looking man let him in, and they spoke briefly before Tim waved for Donna to come over. She got out and hurried to the door, which the man held open for them both. The man returned to the counter and waited. Donna started to walk toward him, but Tim gently held her arm. She looked at him in surprise, which made him smile. So far, so good, he thought. "Donna," Tim said seriously, "I want to share something important with you. I love you." She smiled and turned a little red. "Tim, I love you too, but we need to hurry or we'll be late." "We won't be late." Her confusion and slight irritation told him it was time to be serious. "Sweetheart, the last 8 months have been more wonderful than I could have ever imagined. When you came into my life, everything changed so quickly." He knelt down and saw a tear roll down her cheek. "I love you and want to spend my life with you." "Will you marry me?" Tim asked, holding his breath. They had never talked about marriage, so he wasn't sure how she would respond. Donna stared at him for a moment, her lips shaking, tears streaming down her face. "Yes," she finally said. "I'd be so happy to marry you." Tim stood up and embraced her tightly, kissing her gently. She turned her head to kiss him on the cheeks and then buried her face in his neck. He held her close, feeling her warmth. After a moment, she pulled back. "I've been waiting so long for you to say that. I love you, Tim." She leaned her head against his chest, quietly crying. After holding her for a little while, he remembered the salesman. They needed to hurry. Tim had only paid him until 7, and he knew time was running out. He let her go and stepped back. "Donna," he said with excitement. "Choose," as he gestured to the rings on display. She looked around at the lovely rings for a few seconds while Tim waited eagerly. Finally, she turned to the salesman, saying, "I'm sorry, but the ring I want isn't here." He tried to reassure her, saying he could order any design or even make something special, but she shook her head and turned back to Tim. My ring is at your house, Tim. You bought it for me 5 years ago. I won't wear any other one. Tim felt tears welling up. Her words touched him deeply. That ring had a mix of memories, but it also held hope for a future he had longed for. He hadn't realized she would want that ring more than any other choice. I wish there was a way to express how much I love you. There is, she said with a smile. Take me home to get my ring so I can show Pete and Trisha. She leaned in and kissed him again, and then they walked toward the door. He turned and gave the salesman an apologetic look, glad he had paid the man in advance. They drove home in silence, Donna cuddled against his arm. Tim wanted to say something but struggled to find words to share his feelings. Sometimes he still felt like the awkward kid from school. While she waited in the living room, Tim hurried upstairs to get the ring from his drawer. He had kept it there all along, even after Donna had found it. He couldn't quite say why, but there was a belief he had about it staying in the same spot that felt important. He picked it up, took a quick look, and then rushed back down the stairs. When he got to the bottom, Donna was there waiting. Tim noticed she seemed nervous. She looked delicate and sweet, and he wanted to remember that moment forever. If you don't mind, I'd like to do this again, he said, worried she might find it a bit silly. She nodded with understanding. I was going to ask if you would. Tim got down on one knee once more and repeated his proposal. When she said yes, the feelings they shared were just as strong as before. He opened the box and gently placed the ring on her finger. He stood up and kissed her warmly, then stepped back to hold her hands as they enjoyed the moment. Donna admired the ring when she suddenly glanced at her watch. Oh no, Pete and Trisha are waiting for us, she said. They both laughed, knowing their friends were used to Tim being late. 30 minutes later, they walked into the restaurant and saw the couple waiting at a table. Donna ran over to show off her ring. There were congratulations and hugs all around as they ordered champagne to celebrate. Trisha got teary-eyed as Donna shared the story of the proposal and her request for the old ring. The evening went on for hours as the women started talking about wedding plans. Guys, Tim finally said, feeling worn out, we've been engaged for just a few hours. Can't this wait until tomorrow? Trisha gave him a tired look and turned to Donna. Men really don't get it. In October 2006, Tim came home right on time at 5 o'clock. He smiled, thinking of the things he wanted to do for Donna before she arrived. It was rare for him to be home from work before her. She had been very understanding about his busy schedule since they got married, and he tried to show his appreciation whenever he could. As he walked into the kitchen, he noticed their wedding photo from 11 months ago. To him, Donna was always incredibly beautiful, but seeing her that day had left him speechless. He felt pride remembering how she had walked down the aisle. Since her father had passed away, she had asked Tim's dad to walk with her, which was a kind gesture he would always cherish. Their lives had continued to grow better since their wedding, bringing them happiness and comfort with each other. However, everything was not without its challenges. Tim found himself feeling a bit jealous for the first time in his life. It didn't happen often, but a part of him couldn't shake the feeling that something bad could happen. His new concern had no clear reason. Donna never gave him a cause for doubt, and always tried her best to ease his worries. Still, she had her limits. A few times, Tim had pushed too far and found himself facing his wife's hidden temper. When it came out, she was strong enough to stand her ground. Fortunately, she usually forgave him quickly. These issues were not too serious, though. They had a great marriage and a close bond that Tim cherished. Donna loved her job but always made time for their family. He smiled at the wedding photo of her he had on the wall and walked to the kitchen, planning to make dinner for her. Just then, the phone rang, bringing him back to reality. He walked over and answered. "Hello?" he said cheerfully. "Hi, is Donna there?" a man's voice asked. Tim's stomach dropped, feeling like he'd been hit. "No, she's not here. This is her husband. How can I help you?" he said sharply. There was a click, and the line went silent. Tim slowly put down the phone and stared at it, trying to convince himself he had imagined the call. Looking up, he saw his reflection in the mirror. He looked shaken, as if he had seen a ghost. "Great," he muttered to himself. He couldn't forget that voice. Jake. "This is wonderful, sweetie," Donna said happily. "What's the special occasion?" Tim tried to push away his uneasy feelings. "I got home early and wanted to do something nice for you." She noticed his mood. "Tim, is something wrong? You seem off tonight." "No," he lied. "Just a tough day at work." "Well," she said with a smile, "since you did something thoughtful, how about I help clear the table and then do something nice for you?" He thought about saying he was too tired, but decided it wouldn't be fair since she hadn't done anything wrong. All night he had watched her closely, looking for any signs of trouble or clues about Jake's call. Nothing seemed unusual. The voice in his head insisted he should talk to her about it, but he pushed that thought away, choosing not to share his concerns. After Donna finished the dishes, she reached for his hand. He took it and followed her upstairs, trying to shake off his worries. "She hasn't done anything wrong," he reminded himself. "At least nothing I know about," the other voice in his head replied. As they entered the bedroom, he tried to focus on the happy evening ahead, wanting to enjoy their time together without doubt clouding it. Donna walked to the bed, smiling at him. She quickly took off her jacket and stepped out of her pants, turning to look at him. "Wow, I never get tired of looking at you," he said with a laugh. "And I never get tired of hearing you say that," she replied with a smile. She shrugged her shoulders, letting her jacket fall to the floor, then slid her pants down her legs. She stood confidently in front of him, hands on her hips. Tim moved closer, embracing her and giving her a warm kiss. She pulled away with a playful smile, reaching up to adjust his shirt. When she finished, she leaned in and kissed his neck gently. She looked into his eyes, smiling softly. "Oh, wow," he sighed, noticing her subtle gestures. Donna responded with a soft sound as she continued to show her affection, moving closer to him. His jacket slipped off and she gently held his hand, showing her care and attention. "What do we have here?" she asked sweetly, adjusting his shirt and smiling warmly. Tim felt happy as she looked into his eyes, showing her love and appreciation. "Baby," he whispered, as she guided him to sit beside her on the bed. She helped him remove the rest of his clothes, then continued to show her affection with gentle touches. She moved closer, leaving a trail of warmth and kindness across his skin. She adjusted her position, holding his hand tenderly, and when she was ready, Donna gently leaned in, showing her love and support. "Oh yeah," she whispered, smiling as she moved closer, holding him tightly. Her eyes reflected her happiness as she embraced him fully, sharing a moment of deep connection. Tim held her close, enjoying the warmth of her embrace. She kissed him softly as he guided her to lie down, taking the lead with gentle movements. He lifted her knee gently, finding a comfortable position. His lips found her chest, and he playfully nibbled, causing her to make a small sound. Her breathing matched his movements, showing him that she was getting close to feeling good again. Then, with a quick motion, he pulled away, making her let out a soft whine. "Turn over," he said softly. She turned onto her stomach, and he helped her up to her hands and knees. "You look great," he said with a smile, leaning in playfully. "Hey," she said, surprised but light-hearted. "Sorry, couldn't help it." He gently brought her back onto her knees as he stood behind her, sliding back into her warmth easily, letting him move more steadily. "That's it, Tim. Go stronger," she encouraged. He held her hips, using his strength to keep up a steady rhythm. "Almost there," she said softly. Tim sensed he was close too, so he reached under her, adding a light touch that made it even more intense for both of them. "Ah," he exclaimed as they shared a moment together. It felt wonderful, and he wrapped his arms around her as they both relaxed after the strong feelings. Donna sighed into the pillow, feeling good as they both enjoyed the after effects. Tim held her close, feeling her heartbeat against his chest as she calmed down. When she became still, he turned them onto their sides, holding her close. He could hear her breathing slow as she settled in. Tim kissed her softly behind the ear, causing her to shiver a little. "Don't start something unless you're ready to finish it," she said teasingly. "I give up," he replied, laughing softly as he continued to hold her. She looked peaceful, her chest rising and falling gently. Donna turned to kiss him softly and tucked herself under the blanket, snuggling against him. "That was lovely," she murmured sleepily. "I love you so much." As Tim watched her drift off to sleep, he felt grateful and hopeful about what she had said. "Are you serious?" Trisha asked, not believing it. There's no way she's involved with that person calling your house. Please tell me you'll talk to her about this. Tim glanced at Pete for support, but didn't see it. He knew discussing this wouldn't be easy since they both cared for Donna and wouldn't want to believe anything negative about her. Tim faced a tough situation. He didn't know what to do and felt alone without anyone to talk to. Even though Trisha was worried, Tim thought he needed to be careful, just in case something was happening he didn't know about. What if she does know something? If I say anything, I might never find out the truth. He didn't just call by chance, he asked for her. He knew she was supposed to be there. I won't jump to conclusions, but I want to keep this quiet for now. Tim, Trisha said softly, trying to be supportive. You mentioned before that he hurt her. Why would she want to be near him again? She loves you and wouldn't risk hurting you. I'm not blaming her, Trisha, he replied, keeping his voice calm. I know she did some foolish things because she struggled to say no to him. That doesn't mean I think she did anything wrong, but I need to be sure. If she knows something and hasn't told me, I'd rather find out before I talk to her. Otherwise, I'll always question if I have all the information. His friends didn't look happy about his choice, but Tim knew they respected his decision. Trisha gazed at him with concern, saying, I hope you know what you're doing. For the next 2 weeks, Tim kept a close watch for anything strange. He thought about hiring a private investigator or using a listening device, but that seemed too drastic. He hadn't seen any signs from Donna that she suspected anything. If he acted recklessly, it could cause serious issues between them. Their anniversary was only 2 weeks away, and he didn't want to spoil it with unfounded doubts. He noticed a lot of calls on the answering machine with no messages left. Tim frequently checked the caller ID, but the ones that weren't from salespeople came from an unlisted number. Since there were a few calls from the same number, he grew suspicious. However, it wasn't the same number Jake had used before, so he remained in the dark. Just when he was starting to doubt himself, his cell phone rang. It was Donna calling. He answered right away. Hey, beautiful. Hi, love, Donna replied. I'm really sorry, but they want me to stay at work again. Michelle is sick and there's nobody to cover until 7. Tim felt a wave of disappointment. This is the 4th time in 2 weeks. Are they ever going to get more staff? She sounded regretful. Believe me, I wish I could be home with you. I know this is frustrating, but they are really short on help. They warned me it might happen when I took the job. Please don't be upset. I promise to make it up to you when I get home, she said playfully. Okay, with an offer like that, how can I be upset? You get back to work and I will stay here at my desk. I have things I really should do anyway. This gives me a chance to work without missing time with you. I'll be home in time to see you tonight. I want us to spend some time together. I love you. I love you too. I can't wait. After he ended the call, he slammed his phone on the desk. No matter how hard he tried to understand, Jake's call made him want to be with her more, just to show her he valued her. Sadly, their jobs got in the way. He knew getting upset with her wouldn't help. It felt like the best choice was to trust her and share the information about the calls, hoping it wouldn't make him feel weak if she was hiding something. Tim shook his head at his odd worries. Donna loved him and had done nothing to suggest anything was wrong, yet he felt he needed to guard himself against the idea that she might be planning something. He went back to work, wondering if he was just messed up in his head. Front desk, can I help you? Melissa, is that you? Tim asked. Hey, Tim, she replied cheerfully. You just missed her. Missed her? He asked, confused. I thought she was working late again. He heard her sigh. They found someone to cover her shift. She went to dinner at Spiaggia's with some people from the morning shift. I think she's coming back here before going home. Do you want me to leave her a message? That's okay. I'll just pop over and surprise her. It's only about 10 minutes from here. Okay, Tim. I've got to go, she said, sounding annoyed to be left out. He hung up the phone and packed his things to take home. Even though he wanted to spend the evening together, he was glad the group was going out. He knew they needed a chance to relax. Maybe he could even buy a round of drinks to show what a great husband he was. 20 minutes later, he parked the car and jumped out, excited to surprise her. When he walked inside, he quickly saw several tables grouped together with a mix of women and men. His idea of impressing her co-workers vanished when he noticed Donna and the man sitting next to her. Jake, he mumbled quietly. The man who had troubled Tim's thoughts for years looked familiar from college, a little thinner but clearly still in good shape and happily chatting with the women around him. As Tim made his way around the aisle, he caught a glimpse of Donna, who didn't seem happy. Maybe she's upset they can't have time alone, he thought bitterly. Taking a deep breath, Tim walked toward the table. By chance, Jake noticed him first. He smirked and leaned back, crossing his arms. "Well, it's been a while. It's Todd, right?" he said loudly. Tim was angry but tried to hide it. "No, it's Tim," he replied, trying to stay calm. He then turned to Donna, who seemed really upset. "I just came to say hello to my wife, if you wouldn't mind," he said gently, taking her arm and guiding her out the front door. Outside in the parking lot, she turned to him. "Tim, it's not what it looks like. If you would just—" "I don't think you need to finish that," he interrupted, ignoring her worried face. "Here you are, having dinner with the guy who hurt me 7 years ago. That explains a lot." He paused to calm himself. "I just wanted to say hi," he said, pretending it didn't matter. "Since you look like you're having a great time, I'll leave. See you later." He turned and walked toward his car. "Tim, please," she pleaded, her voice shaking. She grabbed his arm and spun him around. "This isn't my fault. I didn't know he would be here. I came with Janet and couldn't just ask her to leave when I walked in and saw him. Just let me come with you and I'll explain everything." He thought for a moment, then said, "All right. I'll give you 30 seconds to say goodbye to your friends. I'll wait at the front door. I'll take you to your car and then we can talk at home. If you're not there when I pull up, I won't be stopping." His serious look showed he meant it. She nodded, wiping tears from her eyes. He watched her hurry back inside and walked to his car, wondering if she could say anything that wouldn't make him tell her to leave. "It happened about 4 weeks ago," Donna said, handing him a cup of coffee. She poured herself some and sat down, looking drained. "I was about to get on the elevator when I heard a man say my name. I knew it was him without looking. When I asked him what he was doing there, Jake said he was working. After not making it in the NFL, he used his connections to get a job as a personal trainer. He finished his degree and someone from the hospital board helped him get a job at the rehab clinic. That's the building at the north end." Tim glared at her. "So when were you going to tell me?" Donna searched his face for any sign of understanding, but found none. "I'm sorry I didn't tell you that day. I really am. I told him not to disturb me at work or I would make a complaint. Since he wouldn't even be in the same building as me, I wasn't sure what to do. If I mentioned it to you, I knew it would upset you to know he was nearby. I felt it was wrong not to tell you." She buried her face in her hands. "I just didn't know how to handle the situation." He gave her a moment to gather herself and then asked, "So you didn't tell me because you knew you wouldn't be seeing him?" When she nodded, he added, upset, "Then why did I find you having drinks with him today?" "That wasn't my choice," she replied. "We got time off at the last minute. Janet invited me to join some of the girls for a drink after work. You said you would be working late, and since I was already set to work until 8, I agreed. I thought I could enjoy a nice dinner with them, bring you something home, and then relax the rest of the night with you." When I got there, Jake was already at the table. He came with one of the other girls. Janet drove me from the hospital, so I couldn't ask her to leave without causing a fuss. I called a cab and sat as far away from him as possible, hoping to get through it. Then he went to the bathroom. When he returned, he asked the girl next to me if he could sit with me because we were old friends from college. I tried to say no, but she moved anyway. There was nothing I could do without making things more difficult. That's when you showed up. Donna paused and looked at him with curiosity. "I don't understand. How did you end up there?" "Oh no, don't you dare put this on me," Tim warned her, his voice rising. "I found out my wife was having dinner near my work and thought I would stop by to show how special she was to me." His sarcasm took her by surprise. "I wasn't blaming you," she said softly, trying to calm him down. "I just didn't understand why. Never mind, it doesn't matter. I'm sorry that happened. It must have been hard to see him there." She turned her head and wiped her eyes. "I know you must be angry, but please believe me. I didn't tell you about him because I didn't want you to worry over nothing." "Nothing?" Tim fumed. "How is it nothing that your ex-boyfriend moves here and gets a job where you work? How is it nothing that I see you both having drinks together? You have no idea how close you are to saying something that you can't take back?" Donna's face changed to one of real worry. "Honey, I didn't mean it like that. He doesn't work with me. I haven't seen him since the day I ended things. He's in another building that isn't connected to the hospital. If he had bothered me even once, I would have told you right away. I told him to leave me alone the first time, and I never saw him again." Tim looked at her closely, trying to see if she was hiding anything else. He couldn't tell if she was lying, but that didn't make him feel better. The whole situation made him question his judgment and whether he could trust her. "So, were you going to tell me about it this time?" he asked with sarcasm. "Yes," she replied, gazing directly into his eyes. "I called a cab and planned to go back to work, then drive home and talk to you as soon as you got here." Tim raised his eyebrows, not believing her. "This is hard for me too," she said, her voice shaky. "I didn't want either of us to have to think about it again." "You mean you didn't want to feel bad about what you did?" he shot back. Donna took a moment to think, then reached out and touched his hand. "Tim, I was wrong not to tell you. I thought that since I told him to leave me alone, it was better not to upset you. The truth is, I was worried that after all the time it took for you to trust me again, this might ruin it." He pulled his hand away and stood up. "Well, congratulations. Not being honest with me about him was a great way to build my trust in you." He left the kitchen, ignoring her tears. "Tim, would you like some dinner?" Donna asked quietly. It had been 2 days since their fight about her after-work party, and things were very tense. They shared the same bed but had barely spoken and hadn't touched at all. When he got home from work, Tim found her quietly reading in the kitchen. Not ready to talk, he said hello and went to the den to try to work on the computer. She came in a little while later to check if he was hungry. Tim sighed, feeling overwhelmed. "Thank you, dinner would be nice." "Sweetheart, are you okay?" she asked, clearly worried. "Yeah, I'll be fine." He felt her come up behind him, and then her warm hands touched his face. Her fingers gently massaged his temples, and he started to relax. He leaned back against her, feeling comforted by her warmth and the familiar scent of her perfume. It made him want to believe her, and made him hope that this fight could end. If the roles were switched, would he really want to tell Donna that his old girlfriend had contacted him? It would be the right thing, but how often do we do what's right? He thought. After all, he hadn't told her everything either. These thoughts had been swirling in his mind for 2 days, causing a terrible headache. It had been hurting for hours. As he felt her gentle touch, his last bit of strength faded away. "I love you, Tim," she said softly, resting her head against his. "I'm so sorry." Her voice was quiet and shaky. He turned to really see her for the first time since the argument. Her eyes were puffy from crying, with dark circles underneath. She looked very pale, almost worried. Her shoulders drooped as if she was carrying a heavy load. Slowly, he pulled her close and wrapped his arms around her, letting her head rest on his shoulder. "I know, my dear, I'm sorry too." Tim felt her knees give way as she sank into his lap. "I should have told you about Jake. It felt like a bad dream. I just wanted it all to disappear." She whispered, crying softly. "Donna, I thought about it, and I can't imagine what I would have done in your place. I wish you had told me. It would have changed things, but I understand why it was hard for you. I still worry about him being near you, but it's not your fault he's around. I believe what you said, but from now on, we can't keep secrets. You're my wife, and we need to trust each other completely." She nodded and kept close to him. "No more secrets," she promised. Tim held her tightly, hoping he was making the right choice, though he still felt unsure. "Well, it's good you both finally began acting like a couple," Trisha chided. "Did you tell her about the phone calls?" Tim sighed. "No, there was too much happening to bring it up." He could see Trisha's doubtful look. "Look, she was upset and I was stressed. It just didn't feel right to mention it." "So what about tonight? What will your reason be then?" "No excuses, Trisha. I will talk to her about the phone calls and everything else. I know I made a mistake not bringing it up earlier, but I don't want to do it right before our anniversary. We need some time together before diving back into all of that. If I tell her about the phone calls now, she'll know I didn't trust her. It will hurt, and I don't want to do that to her before such an important day. It would spoil everything." Okay, but are you really going to tell her soon, or will you keep finding reasons to delay? Tim looked at her, feeling frustrated. Trisha, I know you're right, but it's hard. I was wrong to keep it from her. Since she came back, part of me has held back. I love her, but it's tough for me to fully let my guard down. I thought it would happen with time, but it hasn't. Nothing just happens, she reminded him. Pete and I have reached where we are by talking openly and not being afraid to argue when we needed to. You both are great together, but sometimes it seems like you're walking on eggshells, especially since that person called your house. I know, and I feel bad about it. She didn't tell me because she was worried I'd react badly. Ever since that call, I've just been so angry. I get upset about everything, especially because I haven't done anything to handle it. Pete said I should take action, but instead of that, I just watched her to see if she was honest. He looked at his friend closely. I promise that after the anniversary, I will sit down with her and talk. I'll tell her about the calls, be honest about how I feel, and I will change. I want to move past this for good. After that, I'll take your husband's advice and face that person. I'm not sure what I will do, but I have a good job and a good life. I'm also the one she chose. That's what matters. Now that's the person I admire, Trisha said, leaning in to kiss his cheek. Just open your heart to her. She won't disappoint you, and you both will be better than ever. Come on, we're going to be late, Slowpoke. I thought women took longer to get ready, Donna teased. Tim took a moment to admire her in the lovely red evening dress with lace. Well, with how you look, Mrs. Sullivan, I'm just trying not to make you feel embarrassed. She smiled at his compliment. Mr. Sullivan, you could never embarrass me. Donna leaned in and kissed him, lingering just enough to suggest something nice later. Now go wash your face and stop making me redo my makeup. He smiled, thankful they could fix things in time for their anniversary. Although it had been quiet, he felt hopeful about how quickly they seemed to recover. His worries faded as he believed that Jake had tried to approach Donna, but she had shut him down, just as she said. He pushed those thoughts away and promised himself to enjoy the moment with his beautiful wife. All we need is some time without problems, he told himself. We will be fine. A half hour later, they entered the restaurant that Trisha had suggested. It was meant to be one of the best in town for both food and atmosphere. Tim felt proud as heads turned to admire the beautiful woman beside him. The waitress led them to their table and brought a bottle of sparkling drink. The couple laughed and chatted happily for 15 minutes, enjoying their drinks and appetizer while waiting for the main course. Before it arrived, Donna excused herself to go to the restroom. Tim watched her walk away, then shifted his attention to the band. The band was playing soft jazz that brought a nice feel to the room. After a few songs, Tim looked around and realized he was still alone. He checked his watch and saw that Donna had been gone for almost 15 minutes. Where could she be? The food will be here soon, he thought. As the band finished another song, Tim began to worry. He got up, trying to think of a quiet way to check the restroom for Donna. You really don't have to get up for me, said a voice from behind him. Tim turned around, surprised. What are you doing here? He asked, a bit annoyed. What kind of friend treats me this way? Jake replied with a sly grin. I was just here catching up with Donna. She'll be out in a bit. I should have let her have your anniversary off, but she just can't stay away from me. Stop lying. She doesn't want anything to do with you, Tim whispered, trying to keep his voice low. Jake threw his head back and laughed, as if they were joking. Timmy, I've been seeing her for a month. She hasn't told you? That hurts my feelings. Next time I might make her beg for my attention. Tim's mind raced, trying to convince himself that Jake was lying. Donna wouldn't betray him like that. The doubt he felt earlier hit him hard. He trembled with anxiety, frozen and unable to move. I don't believe you. She'll be out soon and this will all be over, he said, trying to sound sure. Well, if you won't believe me, I guess I'll have to show you. Did you see what she's wearing under that dress? Jake said with a smirk. Tim didn't know how to respond. He hadn't seen Donna get ready. She had said it was a surprise. Jake noticed Tim's blank expression and smiled. Well, let's just say I left quite the impression. When she's done, ask her if she could keep up with my request. I can't believe she did that for me now. She wouldn't do it back in college. Now I know you're lying. Donna wouldn't. He paused, realizing the weight of Jake's words. Wow, she said she did it for me, but I didn't know she didn't share it with you first. That's pretty cold, especially on your anniversary. Make sure you enjoy it later, Jake said, starting to walk away, then turned back. Oh, and maybe ask her to freshen up first, he said, laughing as he left. Tim sat back down, feeling completely overwhelmed. Jake couldn't be telling the truth, it just couldn't be real. In his mind, he clung to one small hope. If he could prove Jake was lying, everything would be okay. Donna's voice broke through his thoughts. Hey, sweetheart, you seem lost. Sorry it took me so long. Someone spilled a drink on my dress and I had to get it cleaned. I hope it doesn't leave a mark. It's such a pretty dress. Her words struck Tim hard. A mark, he said quietly, feeling empty inside. Yeah, but I think it will be fine. Oh, look, here's our food. The waitress arrived with their steaks. Unfortunately, the thought of eating or even sitting there was too much for him. Can I take a moment? He asked gently. Without waiting for an answer, he got up and headed to the restrooms, his legs feeling shaky from the rush of emotions. He pushed the door open, stumbled into a stall, and locked it. Sitting down, he buried his head in his hands as confusing thoughts swirled around. He kept telling himself that it couldn't be real. But why would Jake say something I can easily check, he wondered, unless he was telling the truth. No, he said softly. Trisha is right, I need to trust her. She wouldn't do that to us after everything. But every time he thought of his loving wife, Jake's smug face popped into his mind. He struggled to ignore what Jake had said. Why else would he act like this, he thought, searching for another way out besides finding proof. He wanted to believe her, but he needed answers. He sat there for several minutes, first trying to calm down and then planning his next steps. When he returned to the table, Donna's bright smile welcomed him. Are you okay? She asked. You look a bit off. I'm fine, he replied. Just really hungry. The truth was, he had no appetite, but if he didn't eat, she would start asking questions. He couldn't have that talk here in the restaurant. He needed to get to the bottom of things. They ate in silence, and though Donna might have sensed the change, she didn't say anything. When they finished, she expected him to take her dancing. Instead, Tim paid the bill and told her they would go somewhere different. She asked where, but he said it was a surprise. The valet brought the car around and opened the door for Donna while Tim hopped into the driver's seat. He pulled out of the parking lot and turned left, heading toward home. They made some light conversation for a bit until he noticed what he was searching for. The car turned into the same park where he had seen her car almost 2 years ago. It was the nearest place for what he needed to do. In a strange way, he thought it might help him see if his marriage was truly finished. What are we doing here? She asked, looking puzzled. Tim tried to sound cheerful. I just wanted to be alone with you for a moment. You know I care about you more than anything, right? Of course, sweetheart. I love you too, she replied quickly. He leaned in and kissed her, feeling both hopeful and scared at the same time. She kissed him back warmly, and he tried to ignore the voice in his mind that whispered, She has let you down. He gently placed his hand on her side, hoping to feel close to her. She responded warmly, and he sensed her excitement. He slowly moved his hand, and she swayed slightly, but when he tried to lift her dress, she pulled away from the kiss. Tim, no, she said, sounding upset. Not ready to give up, he switched gears and started to touch her gently. She seemed to respond more strongly, and he could feel her tremble. When he moved his hand again, she said no once more, but it didn't seem as certain. As the light from the street illuminated the front seat, Tim noticed something that made his stomach drop. He remained calm, even as he had a sinking feeling about what he was discovering. He decided to find out more. He reached towards where he thought he shouldn't go, pushing aside her attempt to stop him. Why? What are you hiding? He asked sharply. His tone surprised her and made her hesitate, allowing him to continue. What do we have here? She looked confused, sensing that something was wrong. It was meant to be a surprise for later. I thought you'd like it. Aren't you happy? This is not the anniversary I expected, he replied, pulling away and starting the car. He could see her trying to cover herself in the corner of his eye. Tim, what's wrong? She asked, sounding more hurt than angry. We're going home now, he responded, trying not to raise his voice. Why? What's wrong? Please tell me, she begged. He kept his gaze forward. We'll be home in 10 minutes, then we can talk. It's best if we don't say anything else until then. Donna gasped in surprise, but then quietly settled back into her seat. She remained silent until they reached the house. He stole a quick glance and saw her looking at him with worry on her face. He parked the car, careful not to block her in the driveway. Opening the door forcefully, Tim ignored her and walked straight to the front door. He headed right for the liquor cabinet. By the time she entered, he was already pouring himself a drink. "Tim, what is going on?" she yelled. "You've never treated me like this before. I won't accept it." He looked at her with disdain. "Honestly, I don't care what you will accept." Her mouth opened in shock as she stared at him. "Donna, it's time to stop pretending. I know everything." She opened her mouth, but couldn't speak for a moment. Finally, she said, "I don't know what you're talking about." "I'm talking about you and Jake," he snapped. "What?" she shouted. "Where did you get that idea?" "I don't care if you want to deny it. We're done and I want you to leave," he said, feeling suddenly exhausted. "Tim, I don't know what you think happened, but I did not have a relationship with Jake. This is a huge misunderstanding. Please tell me what made you think that." He downed the drink and poured another. "There's no need for me to explain. I have proof and don't care how you spin it. Since you won't admit the truth, I'd appreciate it if you'd leave my house now." "Leave?" she cried, leaning against the couch for support. "You're kicking me out on our anniversary? What is wrong with you?" Her voice rose sharply. "I didn't do anything with Jake. Please stop this madness and talk to me." Something seemed to break inside her, and her shoulders drooped as tears streamed down her face. "I said I want you to leave now," he yelled, not caring if the neighbors heard. "Please don't do this. I don't understand why you won't believe me. Just talk to me, Tim. Why won't you listen?" she begged, sounding desperate. He thought angrily, how could she still act innocent? That made him even more furious. "I'm telling you one last time, I want you out of my house." "Tim," she said through tears, "I love you, and I am done with this. Just go," he shouted with all his anger. Donna cried hard and looked at him with such pain that it felt unbearable. Despite his fury, her distress pierced through his defenses. He felt an almost overpowering urge to comfort her, but forced himself to stand still, showing no kindness. Finally, Donna turned and left without picking up anything but her purse. Tim heard her cries echo down the driveway as she hurried to her car. He walked to the door and slammed it shut, though all his anger had faded away. Instead, he curled up on the floor, feeling awful inside. Tears streamed down his face as he realized that this pain felt permanent. "Tim, I'm really sorry," Pete said kindly. "Is there anything I can do to help?" "Pete, I just need to get out of here. I can't handle her calls, explaining things to my friends or family, and I really don't want to think about him." Pete nodded. "I get it, but you have to face him eventually. You know how I feel about it." "I know, but not now. My life just fell apart. I'm not ready for that. I'm going to find a beach and relax for a week or two. We can talk about him when I get back." "What about Donna?" Pete's gaze was intense. "She made her choice, so let her deal with it. When I return, I'll hire a lawyer and sort everything out." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I need a favor from you. I care about Trisha a lot, but she and Donna have become close. Please tell her I don't want either of you involved in this. I found out she wasn't honest, and I can't trust her anymore. That's it, we're done." "Got it. You don't need to worry about Trisha. She loves you too, and won't rush to take sides. But I dread telling her. She really believed in trusting Donna. Out of all of us, she might react the strongest. The baby situation doesn't help." Tim sighed and looked at his friend. "I'm sorry, Pete. I've been so wrapped up in my own problems. How is she? Have you two decided if you want to know the baby's gender?" Pete smiled for the first time. "We chose to wait until the baby is here. We're both doing well, and I'm relieved it's just a month more. My wife's pregnancy has tested everything my mom taught me. I feel like one of those over-anxious husbands saying, 'Yes, dear, I'm sorry, you're right.' It's been a challenge." "Come on, you enjoy every minute of it," Tim joked. "I've never met anyone more excited about being a dad than you. I wouldn't be surprised if you have 2 rooms ready for toys, one for a boy and one for a girl." Pete looked down shyly, making Tim laugh. "You really do. That's amazing." He laughed until he had to wipe his eyes. "Thanks. I really needed that. I'm all packed and set to go. Are you sure everything will be okay at work?" You really wouldn't be much help there right now. Pete raised an eyebrow. That's true, Tim agreed. They exchanged a quick hug, and he stepped out the door. Tim thought to himself, I wouldn't want to have that talk. Trisha is going to be difficult when she finds out. He took one last look around the house, wondering how different everything would be when he got back. Tim, it's Donna. I don't understand why you think that, but it's not true. Please call me. He pressed a button, and the answering machine crackled. Deleted. Tim, where are you? I'm going out of my mind. I didn't do anything. Why won't you believe me? I'm begging you, call. Deleted. The messages kept coming. There were more than 20. As he listened, her voice changed, sounding more desperate as the messages went on. He reached the last message and found her sounding weary and distant. Tim, don't try to reach me. I listened to everything you thought about me, but I can't do it anymore. The way you treated me was unfair. I didn't know you could be so harsh. Now you ignore me? It's too much and I won't beg you again. I loved you and I'm sorry for both of us. Goodbye. Something in her tone eased his anger. He knew they were over, but hearing her say it hurt. He had believed she was the one he would be with forever. Now, he might have to start over, though he wasn't sure he had the strength to do so. His thoughts distracted him, and he missed his chance to delete the last message. The machine moved on, and a woman's nervous voice played. Yes, this is for Tim Sullivan. My name is Marcy, and you need to contact me as soon as you can. I'm going out of town, but I have to talk to you about your wife. You need to understand what happened at the restaurant with Jake. Please don't wait. You really need to call me right away. I don't want to discuss this on the phone, but it's very important. My number is... Tim stood there in disbelief, missing the rest of the message. Who was she? And how did she know about the restaurant? What did she mean by the truth? He shook himself out of it, replayed the message, and wrote down her number, forgetting all about Donna's last words. Tim walked into the bar, scanning the room for the woman in blue jeans and a red blouse. He spotted her at a booth, already seated. She waved faintly, looking displeased to be there. He approached her, feeling uneasy, like the stillness before a storm. Hi, Mr. Sullivan. Thank you for meeting me, she said, not offering her hand. Marcy, he replied carefully. Your message was hard to ignore. What's this about? Getting straight to the point, huh? She replied with a sad look. I commend you for that. Well, I don't really know where to begin. This is really hard for me to talk about. Tim had no time for small talk after everything that had happened. Look, I don't know who you are or why you're here, but I'm not here for games. You said you know something about the restaurant and Jake, so please tell me. She nodded, her face showing regret. I can't blame you for being upset. What happened was wrong. I just hoped it didn't drive a wedge between you and your wife. Tim felt himself getting angry. A wedge? He asked, shocked. She was with her old boyfriend on our anniversary. I kicked her out. Now stop wasting my time and tell me what you want. Marcy looked at him sadly. I'm really sorry, Mr. Sullivan. I promise I had no idea. If I had known, I wouldn't have helped him. Helped him? Jake, she confirmed. I was the one who helped him deceive you. Deceive? He said, suddenly feeling uneasy. Your wife never had a relationship with him. She ignored him completely. No, Tim groaned. You're lying. He told me, yes, he told you what he thought would make you doubt her. We met right after he came here and we've... She hesitated, looking uncomfortable. Been close now and then since then. A few days before your anniversary, he called me and asked for help. He said a guy who had wronged him would be at a restaurant with his wife for their anniversary. Jake wanted me to help him make the guy think his wife was unfaithful. From what he said, you were making his life hard. He claimed that your wife used to date him and was making serious threats at work. I knew it was wrong, but I wanted to trust him. It took time, but I eventually agreed to help. She turned her gaze away, the shame clear on her face. We got to the restaurant just after you did and sat at the bar. After a while, your wife got up to go to the restroom. Jake and I followed her, and he waited outside while I went in. When she was at the sink, I approached her with a glass of wine and you spilled it on her dress, he finished, feeling upset as he remembered how Donna tried to explain what happened. Yes, I apologized and said it would ruin her dress and that we needed to get someone to help. I stepped out and told Jake to ask a waiter for some soda water for the stain. His plan was to keep her in there long enough for you to think something might happen. I went back in to distract her until a waitress arrived. When she did, I just kept apologizing and tried to keep Donna talking. Because I spilled the wine on her dress, she had to take it off to clean it. The waitress hurried out to get her something to wear. When she returned, Donna changed out of the dress and put on a smock. That was when I noticed the underwear she had on. It was what Jake said he needed, but I saw that her underwear was very thin, which made it clear she, well, you know. I told her that my partner liked that too. She looked a bit embarrassed, but said she wore it to surprise her husband for their anniversary. I knew it was just what he wanted, so I excused myself to go tell Jake everything. Then I went back in and tried to keep them busy while he talked to you. She finished her story and looked at him sadly. That's all I have. Tim felt a strong urge to shout that she was lying, that this was some sort of complicated trick to trouble him. People could not be this tricky. In the end, it was all so much for him that he could only ask, "So why are you telling me this now?" He was so happy with how things turned out that he drank a lot afterward. When we got back to his place, he told me the whole truth about everything. I was shocked, and the more I thought about it, the more I felt ashamed. It was foolish to believe him, and even worse to do something bad to people I didn't know. He just had a way of getting me to do what he wanted. After he finished bragging, he fell asleep. I left and haven't talked to him since. To be honest, I don't think he even noticed. Her face showed disgust. I felt it was important to make sure you knew the truth. I just hoped it wasn't too late for you and your wife. Neither of you deserved this, and I'm really sorry for my part in it. Tim's mind was filled with confusion as he tried to separate the truth from the lies. "So why did it take you 2 weeks to call me?" he asked, a bit harshly. She wanted him to see that she really felt regret. "If you had done something this terrible, would you want to meet the person whose life you helped ruin? Besides, I tried to call several times but only got your voicemail. I wanted to talk to you in person. This isn't the kind of thing you can just leave on a machine. I waited as long as I could, but I'm leaving soon and didn't know when I'd be back, so I finally left a message." They spoke for a few more minutes, but she didn't have any answers about Jake's motives. Tim wanted to be angry with her, but felt too busy feeling sorry for himself. After everything that happened, he knew he couldn't just take her word for it. He didn't know who to trust anymore. The only thing he thought he could do was go back to the restaurant and try to find out if she was telling the truth. An hour later, Tim arrived and asked to speak with the manager. He was a neatly dressed man with some gray in his hair, looking to be in his early 40s. "Hi, my name is Robert. How can I help you?" Although he had planned different ways to explain what happened, in the end, Tim felt that telling the truth was best. He shared Jake's claims, but skipped over what happened in the bathroom. "Mr. Sullivan, this is a nice restaurant. I can assure you that nothing like what this man mentioned could have happened here." "Well," Tim said slowly, choosing his words with care, "do you know if anything unusual happened 2 weeks ago Friday night? My wife mentioned something about an incident in the ladies' room with another woman and a glass of wine." "Wine," Robert said, pondering with his hand on his chin. "That sounds familiar. Let me check." He reached for his phone. "Tammy, could you find Louise and ask her to come in, please?" After he hung up, he looked at Tim. "Louise runs the wait staff and would know if anything happened." They waited briefly until a young woman in her 20s entered. "Yes, sir," she greeted formally. "Louise, did anything unusual happen 2 weeks ago Friday night? It had to do with an incident in the ladies' room." Suddenly, her eyes brightened. "Oh, you mean the woman in the red dress?" Tim felt a sharp pain in his stomach and had to wrap his arms around himself. She gave him a puzzled look, but continued. "There was an incident where another woman spilled some wine on her dress. I brought some club soda and got her an apron to wear while we cleaned it. She was very kind, but really embarrassed about the whole thing. Are you her husband?" He nodded, too shocked to speak. "She couldn't stop talking about you and your anniversary. It was so sweet. I hope I'm that happy someday. Did her dress—" She paused as he suddenly stood and rushed toward the door without replying. "Did I say something wrong?" she called after him as he hurried out. Tim rushed through the hospital doors, hoping to find one of Donna's friends at the front desk. The maternity ward was secure, so he knew he couldn't just walk in to see her. He hoped to find someone he recognized who could help. Unfortunately, the 2 women at the front desk didn't seem familiar. He took a deep breath and approached them. "Hi, I'd like to speak with Donna Sullivan, please. She works in the maternity ward," he said, trying to sound casual. The older woman looked at him with suspicion. "And you are?" He let out a small sigh of disappointment. Her expression was unfriendly. "I'm her husband, Tim." She turned to the other nurse and they exchanged a glance. "I'm sorry, sir, but Mrs. Sullivan asked not to be disturbed." He could almost hear the unspoken addition, "by you." Thinking quickly, he asked, "Could I leave her a note?" The first woman shrugged her shoulders. "If you'd like, I'll make sure it gets to her." Tim quickly wrote a note to say he was sorry. He wanted Donna to know that she hadn't done anything wrong and how bad he felt for how he had treated her. The note felt a bit empty, but he needed to find a way to connect with her. He begged her to call any time and promised to meet her wherever she wanted. When he signed it, "Love, Tim," a wave of guilt washed over him as he recalled the harsh words he had used. Feeling embarrassed, he handed it to the nurse, who acted like it was a bother. Tim thanked her and left, wondering if Donna would ever read his note. "Oh, Tim," Tricia said sadly. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know," he replied. "She won't see me at all. It's been 2 days, and I've been to the hospital 3 times. Her phone isn't working. I even tried calling her mom, but it didn't go well. Let's just say my mother-in-law won't be sending me a gift this year." Noticing Tricia's worried look, he quickly added, "But I don't want you to worry about it. This is my issue, and I'll find a way to fix it." "Donna must be in so much pain," she said, wiping a tear from her eye. "She hasn't talked to either of us since right after you left. I told her that we couldn't get involved and that all I knew was you believed she had been unfaithful. I let her know I was there for her if she wanted to talk, but she hasn't called back. She must think we would take your side." Tim nodded, feeling his own tears starting to fall. The last 2 days had been the hardest of his life, far worse than the pain from Donna's supposed betrayal. He had ruined a beautiful marriage based on what a man he didn't respect had said, not to mention the awful things he had said to the only woman he had ever loved. His feelings of sadness mixed with guilt felt too heavy to bear. "I at least have a plan to face what I've done," he said, trying to sound hopeful. "Your husband told me to go to HR and ask for the number of the family counselor the company suggests for employees. As soon as I can talk to her, I'm going to let her know I'm going to keep going until I can fix what I need to since she came back. I'll do whatever it takes to be the man she deserves, and I'll make sure she knows that. Just don't give up, no matter what it takes," she said, drying her eyes. "That's the easiest promise I'll ever make," he replied. They hugged, and then he went to the living room to meet Pete. They walked toward the front door where Tim's friend leaned in and whispered, "You know, there's something else we need to take care of." "I know," Tim replied softly. "It's something that should have been resolved a long time ago." "What do you plan to do about it?" Tim looked at him with determination in his eyes. "I want to confront him." It was just after 10 o'clock when Jake finally stumbled out of the bar and made his way to the parking lot. It took the private investigator just a few hours to find him away from other people. Tim smiled, thinking about how helpful money could be. He watched as the bigger man approached, his head down, lost in thought. As Jake got closer, he noticed Tim sitting on his car. "Hey you, what are you doing on my car?" he said, sounding aggressive. Tim couldn't help but respond with sarcasm. "Aren't you Joey, the old football player?" He laughed. Well, it's the computer guy," he said mockingly. "How's your wife?" "We're doing fine, Jake. You, on the other hand, have been making some bad choices." Jake stepped closer. "Are you planning to do something about it?" "What if I am?" Tim replied. "We've been down this road before. It didn't end well for you. Maybe you should just walk away and let her be with the man she belongs with, like you did before." "Oh, this isn't going to be like college, Jake," Tim said confidently. Jake scoffed. "Yeah, why's that?" "Well, in college you had your friends around. This time it's my time to act." Jake looked around nervously. "What do you mean by that?" "It means, Jake, that you are in a lot of trouble," a deep voice said from behind him. Jake turned, and Tim was pleased to see his face pale as a large figure stepped out of the shadows. The man was tall and broad, making everyone part ways when he walked past. Tim remembered how he met this man, who had once been a big star in football, but an injury changed everything for him. "Jake, I want you to meet my friend Pete." Jake glanced over his shoulder, trying to stay calm. Listen, I don't want any trouble, he said, but he slowly backed away from Pete. Trust me, you're only going to find trouble, Pete said in a low voice. Jake looked around for a way to escape, but realizing he had no options, he lunged at Pete, trying to tackle him. Tim watched as Pete barely moved, then grabbed Jake under one shoulder and effortlessly threw him back several feet. He fell heavily onto his back, the hard ground knocking the breath out of him. Pete was on him right away, sitting on his chest and pinning his arms with his knees. Now powerless, Jake watched as Pete pulled his hand back and hit him hard on the cheek. Tim watched with satisfaction as Pete struck him again and again. That's enough. I think he understands now. Tim nodded. It's your choice. He stood slowly and added, This is for bothering my brother, before hitting Jake hard in the ribs. Tim heard a crack and winced, wondering if Jake would need help recovering. Pete stepped back, leaving Jake in pain on the ground. Tim moved closer. You listen to me, he said quietly, leaning into Jake's ear. You got lucky. The only reason Pete stopped is that he was worried about what I might do if you ever upset Donna again. To emphasize his point, he pulled out a modified stun device he had made. It was just powerful enough to hurt and leave a lasting tingle. Jake screamed as Tim shocked him. Jake stopped moving and Tim knew he had his full attention. He grabbed Jake's chin and looked into his eyes. Do you really think I can't handle you? Don't ever mess with my wife again? He leaned in closer and spoke firmly. I need answers, and for every answer I don't like, you'll get another jolt from this. Understand? Jake looked at him, surprised. Are you serious? He began, but was interrupted by another shock, letting out a strangled cry. Okay, he pleaded. What do you want to know? Pete kept watch for any trouble as Tim made sure to get all the answers he needed. Once he was done, he stepped back. Now, Jake, if you think about telling anyone about our talk, I need you to know something. Do you see that brown four-door car across the street? He asked, pointing to a parked vehicle. When Jake nodded, Tim continued. That's the private investigator I hired. He has photos of this meeting, including your attempt to attack Pete. It wouldn't be good if more charges were added to what you already have. What do you mean, what I already have? Jake asked, confused. Do you know a man named Thomas Walker? Jake looked at him carefully. He's my boss at the clinic, he answered, holding his side. Well, when you're ready to go back to work, he wants to see you. You need to have a serious talk with him about bothering women who work at the hospital and causing trouble between the clinic and one of their biggest partners. He also plays golf with Pete on weekends, Tim added with a small grin at his friend. He believed Jake wouldn't check on that little twist, and it would make him a bit more anxious. And he doesn't like having to deal with problems from lower-level workers, Pete added. So, Jake, I won't be speaking to you again, Tim said calmly. But I want you to know someone is keeping an eye on your actions. My suggestion is to think about moving somewhere nice before things get worse. That's entirely up to you. However, if you ever see Donna again, I strongly advise you to go the other way. If she tells me she saw you, I promise your life will get very hard. Do you understand? He said, holding the stun gun just above Jake as a warning, then pressing the button to make electricity flicker in the dim parking lot. Yes, Jake pleaded. I'm sorry. He stepped back and hurried to his car. As they drove out of the lot, Pete looked at Tim and asked, Do you feel better? Tim shook his head firmly. I don't care about him. I just want to find Donna. 3 days later, nothing had changed. Donna was ignoring all of Tim's messages. Around noon, Pete got a call that Trisha had gone into labor. We're on our way now, he said. If you want, you can come with us and see what happens. Tim chuckled a little, despite his mood. Thanks, but I doubt they'll think I'm family. Go take care of your wife and meet your baby. I really can't wait to see them both. You guys are what's keeping me strong through this. Pete wanted to say more, but couldn't find the words. It hurt him to see Tim like this, and he felt for Donna, too. He wasn't used to feeling helpless, and it bothered him. As he hung up, he heard his wife call for him and happily ran up the stairs, thankful for his good luck, and hopeful he could help Tim with his plan. Tim finished the work he had agreed to do for Pete, and then let Rhonda know everything was taken care of before leaving early. He had a very important meeting he couldn't miss. An hour later, he walked into the house, really wishing he could avoid the talk ahead. I can't believe this, his mother said, upset with the situation. How could you do this? Mom, I wish I had an answer. I was upset, I was hurt, and I thought there was proof she had been unfaithful. After finding out he talked to her without telling me, then seeing them together at that restaurant. I just lost control. I didn't want to listen to her. I thought it was all untrue. And now? He sighed. Now I know what really happened. I see how much I messed this up. All I had to do was be honest with her about the calls, and we could have figured it out together. She is the only woman I ever loved, even after college when I acted like she didn't mean anything to me. Despite everything she did to help me realize this, I still kept her out of my heart. I was scared and foolish. Diane leaned forward and hugged her son tightly, trying to comfort him. He accepted her hug, but gently pulled away. I've thought about every option, even hiring someone to help me reach her. I'm just scared that if I seem too eager, she'll push me away. I might lose my chance to fix this. What keeps coming to mind is how carefully she acted when she returned. If she had come in saying how sorry she was, I would have sent her away and never opened up to her again. But she was so cautious. It made me want to talk to her more. That gave us a chance to move past the bad memories. I think that's the best way to connect with her. Tim, I haven't shared what Donna told me during that time. She never thought you would forgive her. She wanted to talk to me to figure out how to ease the pain she caused you. I told her to give you space, and maybe that's what you should consider doing now. That's not right, Tim replied firmly. She's hurting because of me. I have to find a way to let her know how I really feel. If she needs time after that, I will respect it. I just need a way to reach her. Tim, I can't tell you what to do, and I can't promise anything will work. You've hurt her deeply, but I can tell you that she loves you very much. From all our talks, I truly believe that even with her mistakes, she loved you the same way you love her. Maybe showing her that you understand that is important? Tim thought about her words quietly and suddenly had an idea. Thanks, Mom, he said, hugging her again. I think I get it now. I just feel foolish for not realizing sooner. He left and drove home, trying to believe that it wasn't too late. When he stepped inside, he sensed something was off. Things seemed out of place, and some of her things were gone. Donna, Tim called out carefully. He went up to their bedroom and saw more of her belongings missing. The closet door was open, and her side was empty. He felt a heaviness in his shoulders as he walked back down. When he returned from a 2-week vacation, he noticed only a few of his things were missing. It seemed like Donna had taken just enough to get by, probably thinking she would come back. But now, with so much gone, it looked like she had no plans to return. As he entered the living room, he spotted an envelope in the middle of the coffee table. Tim was surprised he hadn't seen it before. His hands trembled as he picked it up and opened it. Inside, he heard a soft clink. He looked down and saw Donna's engagement ring fall from the note and roll onto the floor. He bent down and retrieved it, feeling a lump in his throat. Holding the ring tightly, he opened the letter and read, Tim, you can have this back. I don't need it anymore. Please don't try to contact me at the hospital again. You made your feelings clear. I want you to know that, aside from the 2 times you already know about, I haven't seen or talked to Jake since college. I don't want to be with him again. You are all I ever wanted, though I don't expect you to believe that. I love you, and I'm sorry you couldn't trust me. I know I made mistakes, and I regret them. There is nothing of yours that I want. You can keep your house and everything in it. Just let me go so we can both move on. Donna. 2 hours later, Pete called to share the news about little Cynthia Marie. Tim tried to sound happy, but it was clear his heart wasn't in it. He decided not to mention the ring or the letter, knowing this was Pete's moment to celebrate. After letting Pete share all the details about the birth and how mother and baby were doing, Tim told him to give Trisha a kiss and wished him good night. Hours later, he fell asleep on the couch, still staring at the ring, lost in thoughts about how to fix this situation. Hello? A woman's voice answered, sounding unfriendly. Caroline, it's Tim, he said, trying to be polite. From her tone, it was clear she knew who was calling. Can I please talk to you for a moment? Just as Tim feared she would hang up, she hesitated. Maybe it was something in his voice or maybe something else, but she allowed him a chance to speak. Go ahead, she said reluctantly. He took a deep breath, thankful to finally get a bit of a break. Caroline, I did a terrible thing. The reasons aren't important right now, though I want you to know that Donna didn't do anything wrong. I can explain what happened if you want, but those are just excuses. The truth is that I hurt your daughter badly because of my jealousy and insecurity. He paused, allowing her a moment to respond. Go on, she said, offering him a bit of hope. The most important thing now is that Donna understands I never meant the awful things I said to her, even when I felt upset. I said those things to make her feel what I was feeling. I never hated your daughter. She is the best thing in my life, and I will love her forever. Well, Caroline replied, that sounds more like the young man I thought I knew. But Donna is really hurt. I don't think there's anything you can say to fix what you did. No, there isn't, he agreed. But I'm not the priority right now. Since she won't speak to me, I want to share what happened. If you understand, maybe you can help her. He struggled to find the right words, realizing that his planned speech wouldn't change anything. He needed to express his true feelings. If something happened to me tomorrow, she'd believe I meant the terrible things I said for the rest of her life, and I can't let that happen. At least if she knows the truth, it might ease her pain. Even if she can't forgive me, she needs to know how I truly feel. Okay, she said, sounding a bit more open. You tell me what happened and I'll tell her. I can't promise anything more. Tim covered the phone and let out a deep sigh of relief. All I ask is that you meet me somewhere. If I'm going to share everything, I can't do it over the phone. I can come there tonight if you'd like. He crossed his fingers, hoping she would understand. That's not necessary, she replied stiffly. Why? He asked, feeling disappointed. Because I'm already here. Yes, he thought, feeling thankful and holding back the urge to cheer. Where do you want to meet and when? Do you think that will really work? Pete asked, sounding unsure. Tim shrugged. If Caroline knows everything, at least Donna will too. It might not bring me closer to winning her back, but I can wait for that. I couldn't sleep last night, just thinking about her alone in bed. Imagine how much she's hurting. He shook his head sadly. The things I said to her, and then I pushed her away, on our anniversary. Pete placed a comforting hand on Tim's shoulder. It was a big mistake, but feeling bad about it won't help. Tim nodded. I know, but until I know she's okay, I won't be able to handle this. You still haven't seen her at the hospital, right? He shook his head. I know she's there, but I can only go straight to Trish's room. I feel awful about it. She and Trish had become so close. She must be staying away from us because she thinks we'll interfere. Look, Pete, you've done more for me than I can ask. Trisha told me not to jump to conclusions, but I didn't listen. Right now, it's important for you to be with your wife and little girl. I got myself into this situation. I'll find my way out. If you run into Donna, just introduce her to Cynthia. That would mean so much to her right now. I guess you're right, but I still wish we could help. Me too, he replied sadly. But this is something I need to handle myself. There was a short silence as they both looked for the right words. Finally, Pete spoke up. So, where will you meet her? He asked softly. It was just after 5 o'clock when Tim entered the restaurant. After briefly scanning the aisles, he spotted Caroline sitting in a booth between two empty ones facing the door. He took a deep breath to calm his nerves, then walked toward her, grateful for the tall backs of the booths that offered some privacy. Caroline, he said nervously. Tim, she replied with a cool tone. Her greeting was not as cold as he had expected. He tried to take comfort in that small kindness. He slid into the seat across from her and took a sip of the water the waiter had brought. He wondered if she noticed how much his hands were shaking. How is she? He asked. How do you think she is? Came her sharp answer, making him flinch. Look, Tim, I'm not here for small talk. I always liked you, and that's why I'm giving you a chance to speak. Her voice trailed off as she looked over his shoulder, losing her focus for a moment. She quickly returned her gaze to him. I want to know how you could have treated my daughter that way. She cares for you more than anything, and from what she told me, you were very unkind. Looking down, he struggled to find a way to explain himself. He thought about how he had been avoiding telling Donna the truth, and where that had led him. Just tell her the truth, a voice urged in his mind. He took a deep breath and decided to be honest. I was unkind, he admitted, looking at her. Selfish and unkind. His words seemed to surprise her. I believed the worst about her, and instead of talking it over like an adult, I made a terrible mistake. Everything I said was meant to make her feel as bad as I did. It was childish, and she didn't deserve that. Then, when I found out she was innocent... Tim paused, struggling to express the flood of feelings he had. It took me 2 years, but now I understand why Donna came to see me and what she said. Noticing Caroline's confused expression, he continued, Your daughter isn't just my wife. She's a part of my heart, and has been ever since we met. I don't want to find her just to say I'm sorry and hope she can forgive me. I need to find her to help lessen the hurt I caused. The thought of her in pain is too much for me. I feel like I'm hurting inside. When she hurt me in college, she had to carry that pain for a long time. Discovering she was wrong about Jake and having to leave school, losing her father, it was all overwhelming. She couldn't cope with that much hurt. The one thing she could control was trying to help me. She thought if she could ease some of my pain, she could heal and move on with her own life. That's how I feel now. I can't just go on with my life knowing she's hurting because of me. She might never forgive me. And maybe she shouldn't, he said sadly. But I want to make things right for what I did to her. If she can see what happened and why, then I will accept her choice, even if that means a future without me, he added with great difficulty. Caroline's expression softened. What made you think she would be with that man in the first place? She asked. Tim looked down at his hands. He told me. He heard Caroline's surprised gasp, but he felt dizzy, and the sound seemed far away. He took a quick sip of water to steady himself. It started a couple of months ago. He called our home one day and hung up after asking for her. Then there were more calls from a number I didn't recognize, but no messages were left. I didn't tell Donna because I was worried about why he had our number. When I found her at the restaurant with her friends and him, it was almost too much for me. I was furious. He paused to take another sip of water. Donna gave me a few days to calm down, then explained everything and apologized. She seemed so sincere that I forgave her, but part of me still couldn't fully believe what she said. I tried to put it aside and enjoy our anniversary, but I know it was still bothering me. When we got to the restaurant, Donna went to the restroom. About 15 minutes later, Jake showed up and told me they had been together since he came to town. He also said she was gone so long because they were together in the back of the restaurant. He hesitated, struggling to continue. Caroline jumped in without a pause. So, a man you don't trust walks up and says he's been with your wife and you just believe him? She asked, surprised. No, he replied, trying not to sound like he was making excuses. I told him he was lying, but he said he had proof. What kind of proof? She asked, confused. This might sound strange. A woman spilled a drink on Donna in the restroom. She had to change out of her dress to clean it before it was ruined. The woman was Jake's friend and ran out to share some personal details with him. That's how he made me believe he was honest. She sat back, clearly surprised. He went through all that for what reason? Tim shrugged. He said he never got over her leaving him. When he came here for work and saw she was at the hospital, he thought he could come between us. He used some of her friends at work to get information about our lives. They had no idea they shouldn't talk to him. None of that matters now. He won't be bothering her again, he concluded firmly. Caroline paused for a moment, trying to collect her thoughts. Tim, I'm sorry. Neither of you should have had to deal with something like this. She looked down for a second, still processing everything. But that doesn't excuse how you treated my daughter. He looked at her with honesty. Nothing can excuse my actions. I love her more than anything, yet I did things to hurt her. Every night I try to sleep but just lie there wishing I could hold her and tell her I didn't mean it. I know it doesn't change things, but I'm really sorry. I don't even know how to explain it to her, or to you. I would do anything to take it back. Tears came easily for Tim after days of feeling upset. Talking to Caroline pushed him to his limit. Excuse me, he murmured, planning to go to the restroom. As he stood, she grabbed his arm. No, don't leave, she said, surprising him with how firm her voice was. Then it softened. Could you tell me why? When Tim just stared, confused, she took his hand. Why didn't you talk to her? I don't understand why you believed him, but all you needed to do was tell her what he said. She's your wife. Why didn't you ask her? This was the moment of truth, he thought. After a lot of reflection, Tim finally grasped his feelings, but explaining it to Donna's mother felt different. He took a deep breath, knowing he had to make her understand. It mattered too much to hold back. "It's because I expected her to leave me." "What?" she replied, surprised and a bit angry. "Caroline, I'm going to share something I've never told Donna. I should have, but I was too scared. I regret holding it back because I think we could have avoided all of this if I weren't so afraid. The night I learned about Donna and Jake, something happened after I left. Jake followed me and said some hurtful things about her. I lost control and acted badly." She looked at him suspiciously. "So, you two had a fight?" "Well, I guess you could say it was a fight. It felt like I was just letting him hurt me. I ended up in the hospital, and it took a week before I was ready to go back to school and collect my things." She held his hand, showing she understood. Even though I thought I had moved past what Donna did, there was still something inside me that wouldn't let it go. What happened in college confirmed every bad thing people had said to me or that I thought about myself growing up. "What do you mean?" she asked. He pulled his hands away and rubbed them together nervously. "I felt like I wasn't good enough for someone like her. Someday, no matter how much I cared for her or how hard I tried to improve myself, someone like Jake could come along and take her away." Caroline's face showed that she was starting to understand. "Someone like Jake," she repeated. "Someone better looking, more popular, stronger. No matter how much I cared for Donna, if he decided he liked her, he could just come in and take her from me. I felt weak and helpless. When he moved here, I worried it would happen again. He just told me what I feared deep down." He lowered his head, unable to meet her gaze. "Tim Sullivan, that is the silliest thing I've ever heard you say." He turned around, shocked by her words. Donna stood next to him, looking both upset and upset. "Donna?" he stammered. "What are you doing here?" She sat down beside him and wrapped her arms around him tightly. She turned his head toward hers, wiping his tears away. Her lips met his, and any confusion he felt vanished. He raised a hand to touch her face and felt the moisture on it. "You're crying," he said with concern. He looked into her eyes, memories flooding back. "Donna, I'm really sorry for what I said. Please believe me." She gently placed her fingers on his lips, stopping him. "I heard you, Tim, and I do believe you," she cried, resting her head on his shoulder. "I've missed you so much." He didn't know what to say, so he just held her and stroked her hair as she cried. Being close to her again felt like waking up from a bad dream. Time seemed to disappear while he held her, silently assuring her of his love with gentle touches. Finally, he broke the moment with a question. "What are you doing here?" he asked, glancing at Caroline. "Don't look at me," her mother said. "I had no idea." "Then how?" he began. "That's a long story," came a deep, familiar voice from the next booth. "Really?" he said, standing up in surprise. "Pete!" He was sitting in the booth next to theirs, smiling widely at Tim. "You said you hadn't seen her. What's going on?" Donna pulled Tim back to sit beside her. "It's my fault, Tim. When Trisha came to the hospital feeling unwell, I wanted to be there for her. I just asked them not to mention you or tell you they had seen me. It wasn't fair for them to be in the middle of our problems at that time. I couldn't miss my goddaughter's birth." Pete moved to their booth and sat beside Donna's mother, shaking her hand. They both turned to watch the young couple, and he spoke. "I feel bad for not telling you about seeing her, but you both asked us to stay out of it, and I didn't want to make things worse. Until Caroline talked to you, that was too good to ignore. I wanted to help but needed a reason. This was just what I needed." Donna added, "Trisha insisted I needed to know what really happened and why you reacted the way you did. I told her I wasn't ready. After all, I gave you 2 weeks and you wouldn't even talk to me." She paused, not wanting to lead the conversation back to hurt feelings. "I'm sorry. I was so upset by what I thought happened that I left for a couple of weeks. No one knew where I was, not even my family. I wish I could change it all," he said softly, gently touching her face. "I love you." "Not again," Pete said with a playful tone. "You two definitely need some time alone." They all laughed together. "There's one question I still have," Donna said, looking at Tim with curiosity. "Everyone at the hospital was talking about Jake coming into the emergency room in rough shape the other night. Do you know anything about that?" "Don't look at me," he replied quickly, glancing at Pete. Peter Briggs, she said with a pointed look. You were involved, and your wife is about to give birth? What if you got hurt or in trouble? What were you thinking? It's not my fault, he said, making a sheepish face. I was just there to make sure nothing happened to your husband, and then that guy attacked me. I swear that kid isn't too bright, he said, chuckling. Donna tried to keep a serious face, but couldn't help but smile. Whatever you were thinking, thank you. She stood up and kissed him on the cheek, making him smile even bigger. Tim spoke up. We were only there to warn him not to cause any more trouble. The situation got out of hand. On the bright side, I don't think Jake will bother us anymore, Tim said. Since what he did didn't happen at the hospital, we can't really get him fired. But our company has a lot of influence because we do so much business with them. Someone will talk to him and let him know that if he bothers you again, he won't have a future at the clinic or any other place. Tim allowed himself a small smile. Besides, I doubt he'll want to run into Pete again. Pete chuckled. You should have seen your husband. He was quite intimidating. Donna gave Tim a curious look, but he shook his head, so she let it go. Pete, Caroline, Tim said, turning to them. I hope you don't mind, but I really want to take my wife home. She's been away too long. He took Donna's hand, feeling a surge of emotion. Plus, I've got a lot to make up for. Donna smiled and kissed him gently. She leaned close and whispered, You're absolutely right. Everyone stood to leave. Tim gave Caroline a warm hug, whispering, Thank you for giving me this chance, Caroline. I won't let you down. She patted his cheek affectionately. I believe in you, Tim. When they reached their home, the young couple entered quickly, focused only on each other. They shared kisses and tender touches, the joy of being together making them clumsy as they bumped into the wall. Donna pulled back, breathing heavily. Tim, I need to tell you something. Shh, Tim said softly. No more talking right now. I just need to be with you. She smiled and nodded, drawing him closer. After a few more hurried kisses, she broke away, rushing toward the stairs. She paused to glance over her shoulder with a playful smile before running up. Tim watched her, feeling overwhelmed with gratitude for having her back in his life. He took a deep breath to steady himself, then followed her upstairs. When he reached the bedroom, he paused for a moment to take it all in. Donna stood by the bed, her blouse loose around her, her hair falling softly across her face. You look beautiful, he said, admiring her. Thank you, she replied with a warm smile, holding out her hand to him. He crossed the room and kissed her gently, pulling her into a loving embrace. They held each other close, savoring the quiet and peaceful moment, grateful to finally be together again. I didn't know how I was going to manage without you. The hardest thing I ever did was take off my ring. Oh no, she suddenly exclaimed. He stepped back, concern filling his eyes. What's wrong? My ring. I need my ring. Can you wait while I go get it? Tim was surprised to see the worry on her face. I don't think that will be a problem, he reassured her. Reaching into his shirt, he pulled out a small gold chain, revealing her ring. I kept it close to me. It was the only way I could get through that meeting with your mother. Donna smiled, a little sadly. I get it. There was no need to explain further. Tim now fully understood how hard it had been for her to face his mom all those years ago. So why did you keep the wedding ring but leave this one? He asked. She sighed. I was so upset that I almost left both behind, but a part of me couldn't let go. I still hoped we could fix things. This ring meant too much to me, and I knew if I left it, you'd understand how hurt I was, how serious everything had become. He gazed deeply into her eyes. I did understand, and I'm truly sorry for the things I said. But more importantly, I'm sorry for not trusting you when I should have. It's a mistake I won't make again. He took the necklace off and gently slid the ring onto her finger. Now everything's back where it belongs. She looked down at the ring, then back into his eyes. Not quite, she whispered. Tim smiled softly and reached out, brushing her shoulder gently. They shared a quiet, tender moment, the unspoken understanding passing between them. He took his time, savoring the closeness they had missed. He sat beside her, holding her hand, the silence filled with the comfort of being together again. They both knew that their journey had been difficult, but this moment was about rebuilding, taking small steps toward healing. Tim's touch was soft and reassuring, reminding them both that in time, things would be all right again. Tim gently kissed her shoulder, moving down her arm as he helped her out of her shirt, which fell to the floor. He softly placed a hand on her shoulder, encouraging her to lie back. His fingers traced her body in a gentle, affectionate manner, drawing a content sigh from Donna. He carefully undid her jeans, slowly pulling them down as Donna lifted her hips to assist him. Soon her jeans joined her shirt on the floor, and he gently caressed her legs, taking his time as he moved his hands up toward her. Tim's touch was careful and affectionate as he explored familiar areas they had shared during their time together. He softly touched the back of her knees, making her legs part slightly. Donna, feeling his closeness, whispered, "Tim, I need you." With a smile, Tim leaned in closer, drawing out the moment as he kissed her gently. Donna shuddered, trying to pull him closer, but Tim kept his playful distance. "Be patient," he teased softly. He continued to kiss her tenderly, staying close, causing Donna to feel a sense of longing. Her breathing quickened and she pleaded, "I'm so close." "I know," Tim responded with a hint of teasing in his voice. He kissed her tenderly, and Donna couldn't help but feel a wave of frustration building as she waited for more. "Are you ready?" he asked, looking up at her. "Please, Tim," she replied breathlessly. He smiled and continued gently guiding the moment, careful not to rush. Donna laid still, her body tense with anticipation, waiting for the next touch. She relaxed as the warmth spread through her, feeling the closeness between them. The waves of emotion and sensation grew as she focused on the connection they shared. She was very nervous, trying hard to stay calm and not give him any reason to tease her more. "Oh no!" she exclaimed, as she finally felt relief, her whole body shaking from the experience. It felt overwhelming inside as she closed her eyes, feeling exhausted from the effort. She stopped trying to follow his lead, holding his head gently and keeping him steady as she moved on the bed, the feeling lasting longer than she had ever felt before. "Please stop," she said, gently pushing him away. Tim stood up calmly, taking off his clothes and watching her as she settled down. Her skin was shiny with sweat, and she looked peaceful in the sunlight coming onto the bed. He admired her as her breathing slowed and became steady. "You're amazing," he said sincerely. He removed the rest of his clothes and moved closer to her, showing his appreciation with gentle kisses. "I love you, Tim," she said, a tear sliding down her cheek. "I'm so happy to be home." He kissed her softly, feeling content and happy. Donna smiled and showed her support. "Do you think you can make me feel even better?" she asked, hopeful for more happiness. "I'll do my best," he replied with a smile. "And I love that about you," she giggled. "How do you want to spend our time?" he asked. "Baby, it's been too long," she said, looking forward to being together. "Let's enjoy our time." Tim moved closer, helping her sit at the edge of the bed. He gently held her hands, bringing them to her chest. He used this moment to connect deeply with her, moving smoothly together. "That feels so good. I'm so happy," she said. He picked up the pace, feeling their connection grow stronger. He listened to her breathing as they moved together. Her fingers touched his arms, showing her affection as they shared this moment. "That's it. I'm so happy," she exclaimed, smiling up at him. Donna moved closer, expressing her joy with happy sounds. Instead of stopping, he held her tightly and pulled her closer, deepening their connection with gentle movements. Their closeness filled the room with warmth and happiness. "Say it," he encouraged, wanting to share their joy even more. "I love you so much, Tim," she exclaimed. "Oh, yes, please, just a little more." He lifted her up until they were at the same height, pulling her close as they moved together. The sound of their bodies meeting was all he could think about. He moved faster and faster until he couldn't keep going anymore. "I'm reaching my limit," he shouted, letting go of her legs and resting on top of her. He lightly kissed her neck, holding on as he stayed close to her. Donna sighed softly one last time, then joined him, her body too tired to do much else. They stayed like that for a few minutes, enjoying the moment and the closeness between them. Finally, Tim leaned back to look into her eyes. "What do you think? Did I do well?" he asked with a laugh. I really missed you, she said sweetly, wrapping her arms and legs around him, wanting him as close as possible. They enjoyed their time together, not wanting to break the peaceful moment. Eventually, Donna turned away and faced him. I have something to share, Tim. You were honest with me earlier, and I owe you the same, she said. He looked at her with curiosity, but didn't interrupt. There's something I didn't tell you during college. I wanted to, but I was scared it would hurt you. After what you said to my mom, I think maybe telling you could have changed things. She took a moment to find the right words. When Jake started being friendly during the summer, he said things that resonated with me. She hesitated, feeling nervous. He mentioned that many women were drawn to him for his popularity or future success, and that really hit home for me. Why? He asked, sounding unsure. Because I wasn't sure how you felt about me, she said softly. Tim sat in surprise. Weren't sure? What do you mean? He couldn't find the words. I knew you cared for me, she assured him, but I didn't know if it was for who I truly was. I wasn't certain about our future. I'm confused, Donna. What do you mean about who you were? Tim, you were amazing, and I loved you, but think back to those days. We were very young. I was your first real girlfriend. You cared for me, but how often did you express how you felt about things? Probably not very often, he said, trying to recall their past moments. Almost never, she replied. At some point, we both needed to grow, but what would keep us together as we did? Were we going to drift apart? Do we have enough to make this work? Donna, that's not right, I said, finally speaking up. I told you every day how much I cared about you. You told me every day how lovely I was and how much you liked being with me. But what about the tough conversations? To grow, we needed to talk openly and challenge each other. At times, it felt more physical than emotional, and I started to wonder, she looked away, if maybe I was mistaken about how you really felt about me. It seemed like you might be in love with an idea of me rather than the real me. What would happen when I couldn't be that idea? Donna, I just can't believe you feel that way. Her eyes sparkled, and I could see she was getting upset. Of course not. I'm not supposed to feel worried or insecure. I'm beautiful, she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. You think I feel secure just because you see me that way? Well, guess what? I get scared just like you do. I did back then, and I still do. She took a deep breath, and her voice softened. You said you see yourself as someone who doesn't deserve someone like me. Did you ever think about what I worry about? Seeing my surprised expression, she continued. I don't understand how you don't see it, Tim. In 10 years, you will be handsome and even more successful. In 10 years, I'll just be older. How can you not see how frightening it is for me to think about all the younger women who will see you as a catch? I'll be older, maybe with a few kids. How will I compete with that? Donna, there is no competition. You are all I've ever wanted since the moment I met you. I smiled at the memory. Remember when I nearly walked into that wall? We both laughed, lightening the mood a bit. So why bring this up now, after all this time? Because of what you told my mom about yourself. When you asked me to stay, I realized I couldn't fix your feelings about the past. I thought I could make up for everything by being the best partner I could be, but I couldn't. Nothing I said or did could make you believe I would always be there for you. You saw yourself as the lucky one, and you didn't think about how blessed I feel to be with you. After everything I experienced, getting to be with you again was a gift, but you were different. You were stronger. You became confident and ready to be my partner, my equal. That's all I ever wanted. She held my face gently and looked into my eyes, hoping I would see her honesty. You can trust me. I never thought anyone was a better man than you. He used lies and tricks to create problems between us. That's all it was, and you need to understand it so you can stop worrying about men like him. Tim kissed her gently to comfort her. Why didn't you tell me all this when you came back? She tensed up again. How could I? I returned after 5 years, and then I would say I cheated because I was unsure about our relationship. What would you have thought? He thought for a moment about his feelings back then. I would have thought you were making excuses and trying to blame me for what happened. I would have been very angry, he said honestly. Donna nodded, her face showing pain. There was no way to be honest without making things worse, and maybe pushing you away. When you asked me to stay, I was so happy but still a little worried about what might happen. That's why I took my time. I wanted to be sure before moving forward again. Then I found the ring. Yeah, he said with a laugh. I remember that day. It was like a light went on for me, she shared. If I'd been straightforward with you before, you could have given it to me in college. We might have worked through our issues. Not only would I have avoided the bad experiences after you left, but I could have spent my last year of college with you. I wish I could have seen you grow from someone I could easily talk to into the strong person you are now. I regret missing that. It all became clear to me about what I lost and how precious our time is because we never know when it could end. That's why I was so excited. Excited? She laughed. I remember it differently. You nearly tackled me. Well, she said with a shy smile, I had good reasons. Enough, Tim said firmly, lifting her chin with his hand. We can't change the past. It's time to let it go for real this time. For both of us. He pulled her close and rested his cheek on her head. I've got you home, and I'm never letting you go again. She looked deeply into his eyes. Is that a promise? Tim kissed her softly, then nuzzled her cheek. I promise. I will do everything I can to make you happy. You are the most important thing to me, and I will be the man you need. I promise. She nestled against him happily, her head on his chest. That goes for me too. I know how close I came to losing you again. I'll do whatever it takes to make sure nothing gets between us again. He smiled at her touch and her words, thinking of ways to make up to her for what his jealousy caused. Tim, this is unbelievable. You don't have to take me out for our anniversary. It was a month ago. I appreciate that you care so much, but it's not needed. Besides, she said, looking at her outfit, I'm not dressed for a fancy dinner. You could have let me go home and change. Tim smiled widely. You look lovely. Just go along with it. Think how good it will make me feel to have a nice quiet dinner to remember for our first anniversary instead of that difficult time we had. We went through it together, she reminded him, stressing the word we. Remember what the doctor said? Everything needs to be we from now on. He leaned in and gave her a quick kiss as the elevator doors shut. The man in front pressed the button for his floor and turned slightly to them. Where are you two heading? All the way up, 96, Tim said happily. My wife and I are celebrating our anniversary with a nice dinner and a beautiful view of the city. It's our first time at the John Hancock Building. I've heard it's amazing. The man checked his watch, then smiled while looking ahead. You'll love it. The sunset at this time is incredible. By the time you eat, it will be dark and even better. Be sure to see Lakeshore Drive and Navy Pier. They are beautiful after dark. The stranger pressed their floor button and stepped back for some privacy. Tim looked at Donna, beaming, and gave her a quick kiss. That sounds perfect. The doors opened at the 95th floor, and the man stepped out. You both have a wonderful night, he said with a playful smile. It's nice to see two people so happy. Take care. He waved as the doors closed, and Tim felt the elevator move up again. A few moments later, it stopped, and the doors opened. They stepped out, and Tim turned to the right, asking Donna to wait as he entered the men's room. Looking at himself in the mirror, he tried to calm his excitement. He thought of the beautiful woman waiting outside. This is worth it, he murmured. He came out into the hallway and took her hand. Looking at her, Tim gently brushed his fingers through her hair. She looked at him questioningly, and he simply shrugged. You look so beautiful. I can't believe it. Donna leaned in and kissed him, lightly touching his chin. You are the handsome one, and I'm the lucky one. Well, I can't argue with that, he chuckled. She playfully nudged him as they reached the bar at the end of the hallway. Surprise! Shouted the excited voices, surprising her completely. Tim turned to see her shocked expression as a few cameras flashed at once. In front of them stood their friends, family, and co-workers, all clapping and smiling. Across the windows on the other side of the bar was a big sign that said, Happy First Anniversary 1 month. Her smile was catching as everyone rushed to give their good wishes. Tim turned just in time to feel Pete's strong hug that nearly took his breath away. Donna, Trisha's voice called out, I think you might need this. She held out the dress Donna had worn for their special day. Looking around at the people gathered, Donna laughed and said, I did mention I was a bit underdressed. Then she went with Trisha and Cindy to the ladies' room to change. Tim chatted with their friends and family while they waited. Everyone was excited to be part of such a joyful evening. Pete grabbed a drink for Tim as he tried to thank everyone for changing their plans at the last minute to help make the night special for Donna. In the middle of the excitement, he felt someone tug at his arm. He turned to see Donna standing there, her cheeks rosy, as everyone admired her. It was amazing to see what the ladies had done in just a few minutes. Her hair was styled beautifully, her makeup looked great, and she appeared stunning in her dress. Tim couldn't help but stare, feeling lucky to have her in his life despite everything they had been through. "I love you more than I thought I could, Tim Sullivan," she said, wiping a tear from her eye. With pride, Tim replied, "Then you love me about half as much as I love you, Donna Sullivan." They hugged, and everyone around them went, "Aw." She jumped a little when a loud voice announced, "Everyone, let's celebrate the happy couple." As applause filled the room, she turned to see her favorite local band in the corner. They started playing a cheerful song, and everyone began to dance and celebrate. Tim led her away from the crowd to the dance area and spun her into his arms as their friends joined in. They danced closely, moving gently to the music. After several songs, they made their way back to a table near the bar where they could chat. "So, do you like your party?" Tim asked, proud of what he had organized. Donna looked at him with admiration, making him blush. "It's perfect. How did you pull this off?" "Well, sweetheart, sometimes you overlook things," he said, glancing over her shoulder. She turned to see the man from the elevator. He smiled and nodded. "I guess I don't make as big an impression as I hoped." Her eyes widened. "Oh, wow, John, I'm so sorry I didn't recognize you." She stood up and hugged the man who had managed their wedding and made the day so special, the one person Tim trusted with something this important. "That's okay, Donna," he said with a smile. "You seemed a bit distracted. The hat and sunglasses probably didn't help, but we wanted to make sure your surprise was safe. I meant what I said. It's wonderful to see two people so happy." Tim noticed a lovely woman walk up behind John and gently touch his shoulder. He turned to her, took her hand, and then turned back. "Tim, Donna, this is my wife Jenny. Jenny, these are two of the nicest people I've met in my work." She smiled and took Donna's hand. "It's great to meet you. I've been hearing stories about how wonderful you two are together for the last hour. I can see they weren't lying." She looked at Tim with intent. "Nice to meet you too. You dance really well. Do you think your wife would mind?" "Not at all," Donna replied with a smile. "He tires me out. I'd appreciate the break." John chuckled, trying not to laugh. "Good luck with this one." When Tim looked confused, John patted his shoulder. "You've definitely met your match here. Jenny used to be a professional dancer. If you can even keep up with her a little, you're better than me." Tim laughed and let her lead him to the dance floor. She was slender, graceful, and full of confidence. He believed John completely just from watching her walk with purpose toward the stage. When the next song played, he was surprised to find someone who made Trisha look less experienced. Jenny was much better than his previous dance teachers. After several songs, Tim thanked her and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek. They returned to the table where Pete and Trisha had joined Donna and John. Trisha looked at him enviously. "That was something," she commented with a hint of jealousy. He shrugged. "Don't ask me. I was just doing my best not to step on her toes." They all shared a laugh, and Jenny thanked him. "I'll have to give you both discounts for any future parties if you keep dancing with her like that," John said. "I haven't seen my wife this happy on the dance floor in a long time. I worry we'll be having the conversation about me taking lessons again on the way home." He grimaced, but looked at his wife with clear affection. "I'm sorry, everyone, but I have to go," Jenny said suddenly. "We have 2 kids at home, and our sitter is probably overwhelmed." "I told you to bring your whole family," Tim said, playfully scolding. John shook his head. "We couldn't. Danny would have loved it, but our youngest is still too small. Those express elevators can be a hassle." Trisha nodded. "Speaking of that, I've been away from my daughter for too long. I feel like I'm going to panic. I don't want to leave your party, but we can't stay much longer." Jenny said goodbye to them. Then John walked her to her car. Pete and Trisha gathered their coats and came over to say farewell. "Pete," Tim said curiously. I want to talk about the night we spoke with Jake, Tim said, glancing nervously at Trisha. He didn't want to put his friend in a tough spot. It's fine, Tim, she replied firmly. My husband is honest with me. He's still dealing with the mess from that night, but I forgive him. I know he's wanted to confront Jake for a long time. She leaned in, sharing a secretive smile. Honestly, I'm only pretending to be upset. When he gets home tonight, I plan to surprise him. I heard you, dear, Pete chuckled. You can count on me to remind you of that. Laughter filled the air, but then Tim's face grew serious again. Before you confronted him, you mentioned that he deserved it for bothering your brother. I agree with you, but it seemed unusual. You had a fierce look that was new to me. Pete took a deep breath and stared at Trisha for a moment. She nodded almost unnoticeably, and he turned back to Tim. I think it's time you learned the truth, he said, his voice turning soft and sad. He held Trisha's hand tightly. When I was younger, my little brother looked up to me. He was 5 years younger and a wonderful kid, even smarter than I was. Our mom made sure we stayed out of trouble and kept us focused on our studies. My first few years in college were amazing. Everyone thought I'd have a bright future in football, and Daryl was excelling in high school. He was never big like me. He was more like you. Tim felt a sense of unease as he noticed Pete talking about the past. Then my senior year, things took a turn. Daryl began facing bullying because of his success in school. Some kids were even targeting me, taking out their jealousy on him. Mom kept expressing her worries, but I was too caught up in my own life to pay attention. Tim was shocked to see a tear roll down Pete's face. It was a side of him Tim had never witnessed before. He felt Donna squeeze his arm, sensing her sadness too. The morning of a big game against USC, I received a frantic call from Mom. She was in tears. After a while, she told me that Daryl was gone, taken from us by someone who had been bothering him. He was my little brother, and I wasn't there for him when he needed support. I promised myself I would play that game in his honor. I did well in the first half, and people said I was on track to be a top draft pick. But I was so focused on taking my frustrations out on the quarterback that I didn't see another player coming at me. That was the moment I hurt my knee. I tried to return, but I was never the same on the field. Pete looked at him with sadness. The truth is, part of me changed that day. I wasn't sure if I could keep playing. I finished school and got the job he would have loved if he had lived. I've been there ever since. Tim felt tears forming in his eyes. Pete, I'm really sorry. Why didn't you ever tell me? He shrugged. I couldn't. After a few years of feeling very down, Trisha made me talk to her preacher. He helped me see that the only way I could handle the guilt I felt was to help someone just like Daryl, someone who needed support. He said I should treat that person as I wish I had treated my brother. It was something Gandhi had once said. I was at a job fair for my company at your high school when I saw you for the first time. I took one look and knew you were just right. They all laughed, breaking the serious moment. The truth is, he said, you were my second chance. I got to watch you grow up and do well. In a way, it felt like a part of Daryl was still alive. It probably sounds silly, but it really helped me. Pete, Tim said seriously, it doesn't sound silly at all. I wish you had told me, but I think I understand. He paused for a moment. No wonder you were so hard on Jake. He's lucky you didn't do more. I almost did, Pete said with a worried look. He's lucky you stopped me. When I looked at him, all I could see was the guy who hurt my brother. Pete shook his head, trying to regain his composure. Anyway, that's the story. Now that you're all grown up, he said with a small smile, I guess it's okay for you to know everything. Not sure what to say, Tim stood and hugged his friend, whispering, Thank you. He stepped back and wiped his eyes. Not wanting Pete to talk more about something so painful, Tim suggested he go see his little girl. He and Trisha congratulated the young couple again and then walked away. It looked like his small wife was actually supporting the big man as they left. Tim felt sad about what his friend had gone through, but amazed at how it had shaped his life. Donna took Tim's hand and leaned in close. Daryl, she said thoughtfully, that would be a nice name for a little boy. He turned to look at her closely. Well, we said we wanted to start a family right away. Can you think of a better name? He smiled, warmed by her kindness. Daryl would be perfect. Thanks for watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe to Infidelity Plus to stay updated with more captivating tales of infidelity and payback. Turn on notifications so you're the first to see our latest content.